March 13th, city council workshop focusing on the zoning ordinance and potentially changes or additions to the definitions and straightening that thing out. And with that, let's call roll. Mayor Pro Tem Villalobos.
Here.
And Councilmember Shell Allen.
Yeah.
And Councilmember Bunker.
Here.
And Councilmember McLeod. Mike, you there?
Mike.
Unmute.
No.
Can they hear us? Because we're muted.
No, this is, that's just my computer that's muted.
Okay,
It's City Hall,
gotcha.
we're live.
Councilmember McLeod, are you present? City Councilmember Clinton, present.
Present.
Mayor DeVinny is present. Lisa, did she come back on there? Lisa, unmute. Tell to us. Lisa, you're gonna have to say yes or no. Mike, you're gonna have to say yes or no.
We try to turn the volume on the computer.
Lisa, Mike, if you could hear us, can you send a chat in the chat box? We can't hear you.
We do have a quorum. I think that they're out there.
You want me to zoom in, see if I can,
Somebody
see
call,
if we can
call her,
troubleshoot?
call her and or Mike, ask them if they can hear us.
Hmm.
Oops.
I'm not sure if anybody can hear me, but I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, I'm hearing Lisa.
Yep.
And Mike? Mike is still not responding. Okay, with that, there is one item on the agenda here today, just change the zoning code, including definitions, development standards, district regulations, use table, zoning map overlays, and other related use issues, and Mr. Annable will take charge.
All right, on the screen, you'll see a quick schedule for today. So this can go as fast or as slow as it needs to go. I would like to get through all of the zoning ordinance if we can. So the less discussion there is, or the less issues there are, then the faster this will go. So my intent is to go through the definitions, then through the zoning districts and use table, have a break for lunch at some point. Get into the supplementary use standards, primarily the campground and RV regulations. Hey, Mike.
I've got the video, but I can't hear anybody at all.
What application are you called in on?
Well, I got the workshop schedule on the Zoom. I'm on Zoom.
Try dialing in with the dial-in phone number,
Okay, I'll do that. Okay.
and then you can probably just use that as your audio while you keep the screen.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We'll get into the supplementary use standards, primarily the campground and RV parks. And then we'll get into the zoning map overlays, and if there's any other discussion on items within the ordinance, we'll have it at that point. So I built in some breaks about every hour or so. We'll use, called ahead to Martindale River Cafe yesterday and let them know that we're having a council meeting and that we might have a bulk order. And so then our 11 o'clock break, we'll capture everybody's order. We'll go down and make the order, and then they can have that ready for us at 12:30. We'll break for a half hour at 12:30 if we're still going at that time, have lunch, and then that lunch can continue into the work session at 1 o'clock. But that'll give some time for the folks at home to grab their food and get back to their desk and continue to participate. So this is not, we're not operating to time, we're operating to standard. And so we'll try to get through it. And then obviously this is for the benefit of city council. So if at any point you want to call a timeout and say that's enough, just make the motion, vote on it. All right. Any questions on this? All right. So first up, we're going to go through the definitions to kind of speed this along and give ourselves enough time to work on any issues or questions that come up. I'm going to kind of go through, pull a setup of definitions on the screen, ask if there's any questions or discussion on them, pause for a little bit, let people review it, and then continue on to the next. I don't think there's a need for me to go through and read every definition in the ordinance.
Yes, could you just explain when this was written or enacted, and then you have made adjustments or rearrangements to it? So can you just give me a brief overlay of this
All right.
document?
So this document is based off of the zoning ordinance that was passed in 2008. There have been some modifications since. It's my understanding that there are zoning ordinances prior to 2008, but the 2008 ordinance wiped all that off the map, so to speak, no pun intended. And then this new ordinance replaced it. Per state law, when a city enacts their zoning ordinance, they do so in accordance with a comprehensive plan or a master plan that takes into account a 20-year outlook of the economic and physical environmental conditions of the city. And it's intended to promote health and welfare, reduce, create good living environments. You're not having a chemical plant next to an elementary school kind of a thing, is in an extreme sense.
Like in Houston, say.
Houston is famous within the planning community of not having zoning. And zoning's been around for about 100 years. It started in the early 1900s. So the way that this is laid out, it starts off with the definitions, talks a little bit about the administration of the zoning code, then gets into the districts, zoning districts that lay out permitted land use within a geographic area. We have a use table that manages the specific uses that are allowed. And then it has additional regulations that are supplemental to that. So we'll start with the definitions. That way we're all kind of operating on the same street of music, and then we'll go forward.
Is this document that you're on?
Yes. Yeah, so for those of you who, this was part of the read ahead packet. You have it in your handout.
Can you scroll to the top of that page
Yes.
so I can see what the heading is?
There we go. All right, so we're getting into the definitions. One of the things that's been a discussion in the past, shall versus may. Point that out, shall is always mandatory, may implies an option. So here's the first set. I'll pause and see if there's any questions regarding access, accessory building, accessory use, agriculture, or art gallery.
Okay, so
Terry, talk a little bit about why some of these are being changed or not being changed. I mean, what we did is we looked at this and said, hey, there's a bunch of things that are referred to in the document, the 2008 document, that have no definitions, and we as current council and other councils surmise what it's supposed to mean, et cetera. So we went in there to try to attempt to fill in those gaps, so that, you know, either further define so that there was no ambiguities or add definitions.
Yeah, so where there's definitions that previously existed, I modified them for clarification. Where you see new definitions, that's because that's a term that was used elsewhere in the document, typically the use table, that did not have a definition. That created issues specifically on the campgrounds versus RVs and what the differences are there. But there were other things such as farm, orchard, ranch, art gallery, bar, tavern, those sort of things were not defined. And with each definition, I used an existing zoning ordinance within the state of Texas or with another city as a reference point, or even just a Merriam-Webster Google dictionary search. So
So if it's in bold, red,
Yeah,
is that what you added?
okay, so yeah, so for those who are unfamiliar with the formatting, so items in black are
we got all black and white in our packets. Everything is black and white, so it's really frustrating to be able to follow along.
It would be green.
it should be gray
They're,
or underlined.
they're great, but there's no page in my packet that looks like what you are showing on the screen. And all of it.
We have an electronic version.
If you have an electronic version in your email, in your packet, if you go in the last handout in your packet, it's about, I don't know, 40 pages. It's the entire zoning code. In the hard copy version, items in red are going to show up as an underline.
Get that.
It's also signified with a black line going down the left side of your page. What you don't see is the line item numbers that I added for this meeting, so it's easy to reference, you know, so someone can say,
That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so that's the part that I'm looking for. I'm looking for where's the page with all these numbers on the left? And there's not.
There's not one.
Mm,
That's the only change between what you're looking at on a hard copy and what's on the screen.
It's on page 3 of the packet. That and
Yeah.
pages are not numbered either. But we're gonna do it.
Okay. So we'll work through that and try to follow along, but right now we're in the definitions.
Okay, so again, so the bold with it all in red, that's what you've added.
So anything in red is a change. If it's underlined, that's an add. If it's struck through, that means it's deleted.
Okay, thank you.
We have the council here, so unless Mike or Lisa, you're trying to call me, I'm going to continue to ignore that.
No.
All right. Sorry about that. So this is in track changes. So as we go through and make changes, I'll be able to do it in real time through the shared screen. You'll be able to see what those changes are. And so the only change that you see here is the art gallery. The definition of an art gallery wasn't previously included in our zoning ordinance, so I added one here.
It looks like somebody's trying to get in.
Okay, let me try that. There we go. All right, any questions on discussion on this? Access through art gallery. All right. Any questions, discussion on bar or tavern through building line?
So
right there on bar tavern, a commercial establishment under the license from what it states right there. But say what if the bar or tavern had a food truck but did not sell food from within the establishment? Would that be covered under that umbrella?
They would have, if there was a bar and they had a food truck in the front of it or something like that, that food truck would fall under the mobile food vendor permitting requirements.
So it'd be two separate.
They'd be two separate things, even if it's under the same owner.
Thank you. No, we're good on that
Okay,
one.
so, a commercial establishment under license with the Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission, which is principally engaged in the retail sale of, alcohol beverages, food, and food with only, okay. All right, so we're not gonna put a percentage or anything? Do we need to? I know a lot of times you have to have like 51% in order
That
to
was,
sell alcohol.
that was something that was relatively new during the COVID response. That's something that the council could consider, is setting a total gross receipts limit on it.
You know what?
I think that that's set by TABC though.
It might be.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
TABC
nothing we
has
need
those
to worry about.
regulations.
Yeah,
No.
it's the establishment has
Yes.
to make sure that they're
Mhm.
in right with the
Mhm.
TABC. Okay.
The addition you see on the boarding house is just to clarify the difference between a short-term rental and a boarding house.
Is that what's,
Were mentioned.
are you,
Great.
are you on the screen? Are you following?
Okay, for on boarding house, a dwelling.
Jared, I hate to ask you this again, but since I was looking through this packet and probably missed some of your information for clarification purposes, if it is highlighted in gray, it is something that you've added, correct?
Not necessarily. As you're looking at the hard copy, the
Yeah.
items in gray only refer to the selection of words that relate to the comment. What you're looking for in terms of ads, the quickest way to identify it is there's going to be a line on the left part of your screen. You kind of see it on this page next to the numbers.
Okay,
That line will indicate where there's been a change. And then if there's words that are underlined, those have been added. If there's words that are struck out, those have been deleted.
okay, so what is highlighted in gray on my hard copy and highlighted in red on the screen is just indicating something you want to bring out.
I simply used it as to place comments of where that information came from for reference.
Okay,
So if the question came up, where did you get that definition? I can say, I got it from New Braunfels, Texas, or at the bottom of the page, Santa Fe, Texas.
for example, the bar or tavern where it is highlighted and underlined, is that something you have added?
Yes, everything that's underlined, whether it's highlighted or not, is an ad.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, issues on this?
So if it's less than 30 days,
Less than
Then
30
what?
days would be a short-term rental.
So boarding house, it says a dwelling, which means one dwelling, say.
We'll get to the dwelling is a kind of a loaded definition. We'll get there in a
Okay,
second. But
okay.
basically it means a house for
uh,
ease of understanding, but we'll get there in a second.
there's more than 4 separate sleeping rooms.
Where there's not
Hmm?
more. Not more.
Oh, it's not more than, okay. Thanks.
All right, moving down. We're looking at caretaker / guard residence through campground. Bit bigger. Yeah.
And you have modular home defined.
Yes.
What about if you had a shipping container and you converted that into a caretaker's residence? What would a shipping container be considered? I mean, that's an industrial thing that is most commonly, not most commonly, but is used a lot now to make into a residence. So you could have like 2 shipping containers, which can be easily bought, and then you use a welding torch and say, cut out windows and doors in that shipping container. I was wondering about the definition of that. That would make a very nice, modern and structurally sound caretakers.
Let's put a pin in that and come back to it, because I don't have a good answer off the top of my head.
Shipping container, thank you. Because that would be considered, I mean, like, you'll define industrial home, but I mean, is that like a metal home? What if you had a barn dominium? Is that industrial or? Because, barn dominium, they're using that word now, and that is a very up and modern thing to build that, to convert a metal structure. So I'm a little leery about saying modular or industrial. I think that's too broad of a definition, and that it needs to encompass discussion on barn dominium or shipping container.
Okay, we'll get to those definitions when we get to modular industrial.
Okay.
And if it's not addressed there, we can, I can take that for action to come back with a definition.
Okay.
But the main point here, from what I'm seeing, is that you can have a little caretaker residence on your property just as long as it's not some kind of a mobile home.
Right, where this would most likely be an issue is if you have in industrial areas, a junkyard house, not saying that they're junk, but a junkyard, have a junkyard or something like that, they want to live on that property in addition with their business to kind of watch over their
Yes, got
their
it.
merchandise.
I understand.
Or this comes into place with a campground or RV park. If they are going to have a caretaker guard residence for the campground.
Well, what if it's like a in-law house or something?
That's going to
That's something
be,
separate, or
that's going to be separate. That's going to be under accessory use.
Okay,
What did you say, Jan?
like an in-law house that's different from a caretaker.
Okay,
That's more on, commercial or industrial businesses. Correct.
In-law house is going to fall under the accessory use description or definition, which is a land use activity or structure that is customarily incidental and appropriate and subordinate to the principal use of land and the principal structure on the same lot. Where that comes in, we'll probably also touch on guest house as a permitted accessory use. Under our current zoning ordinance, basically.
Y'all unmute Mike,
He's on the Zoom, isn't he?
he can't speak. You all have to unmute him.
Is
Did
he
he
on
call
the phone?
in?
He did, he tried calling you all, but he
Oh.
can't get through.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Okay. Technical, I can see okay. Go ahead.
All right.
On caretaker, it says for commercial or industrial use, but what if you say had an elderly person and you had a little house in the back and the caretaker taking care of the elderly person lived there in the residential unit? You would sometimes need a caretaker for an old person in a R1, say, and it would be other than commercial or industrial?
So in that case, there's a guest house is what would be defined that they would be able to use, and we'll get to that definition. in a
Okay,
second.
just want to make sure,
Okay.
because I saw caretaker there, and we are getting into times where we need to take care of our parents, and
Yeah,
so.
so it would fall under guest house, and we'll get to that.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
But like, I think with this, where it's defined what its intended use is for, it's for any commercial or industrial use.
Yeah.
So it's not about somebody taking care of their parent, this is about,
Yeah, it's not a residential.
yes,
So,
industrial, commercial, or industrial, period.
Yes.
Okay.
now. So. Are we going to campground yet? Okay. 50 feet and tents or recreational vehicle less than 20 feet in temporary basis for recreation.
So you do want to include campground and RV in the same sentence in all instances in the use of a campground, or is that?
No, there will be a separate definition of an RV park. This is allowing recreational vehicles less than 20 feet in length to make use of a campground. Basically, those are small little campers. 20 feet isn't very long. That's like a camper van, a camper you put on the back of your truck, a very small trailer, maybe a pop-up tent, trailer tent. Yeah. Those sort of things would be allowed in a campground. Big RVs, standard size RVs, fifth wheels, that sort of thing, would not, are larger than 20 feet in length.
Oh, so that's just too permanent kind of thing for
So
a campground?
It's this it's helping to define the difference between the campground and an RV.
An RV, okay, all right, so,
So you can have an RV in a campground. You can have a tent in an RV park. But in a campground, we're not having big fifth wheels and,
and it's not considered short-term rental or anything.
no, this is a
City
separate
only-
definition.
The city would only, if it's in our city limits, would only deal with the sales tax.
Well, 9 days, it is short term if it's not lasting more than 9 days.
It wouldn't be considered
Yes, but it-
short-term rental.
Yes,
Oh.
I just kind of wanted to clarify that.
It would or would not?
Would not. Let's
If we need to clarify that as we get to short-term rental. we can.
But
Okay.
short term is defined in, say, an Airbnb instance then, or something like that?
It's use of a dwelling. So these aren't dwellings.
So you think charcoal grills for each campsite is necessary? I mean, is that kind of standard for campground?
So this is where we get to make a policy, this council gets to make a policy
Yeah.
decision. By having certain requirements, and we'll get into more of these type of specific standards later this afternoon. By requiring certain standards elevates the quality of the campground. So more desirable. And so by having charcoal permits at each campsite, charcoal grills at each campsite, potable water supply, it means you're not in, what do they call it? Basically, you're not backcountry camping in
It's not
Martindale.
primitive.
Not primitive,
Right.
that's the word I'm looking for.
Right.
Non-primitive.
Jared, quick question. We're just defining that. I mean, are we going to get back to the point of and having a campground in a floodway and a hazardous zone? Is that going to be a later subject?
Yeah, that's gonna be this afternoon.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
What, would a fire pit be considered a charcoal grill kind of thing? If they had like a contained fire pit,
Are you saying that they can only burn charcoal there and not wood?
It's like what we have in the park,
like you have what?
like we have in the park.
So there's no outdoor fire pits anywhere in the campsite?
That's a minimum amenity. So if you if you want to require that they also have burn pits, then we could put that in the definition or the use standard. But I think from a minimum standpoint.
I don't want to add to it.
You acted like you want to subtract from it. Do you want to take that out?
Well, no, I'm just not sure, because it would be nice to be able to cook
I mean, but
If-
like, you're,
if you're in a
I
tent.
think like the interpretation is getting like too deep, like a permanent charcoal grill could be like a brick. You know, as how they go with the
Right.
grill on top that's used as a fire grill also.
Yes.
So, cause I know, cause we've gone to those things, so it could be done. I don't think that it has to be like, you
We don't
know,
have to specify.
each thing, because a grill, you know, that's permanent. We've done fires in there and we've cooked on there, so it can be done.
What do you do when there's a burn?
I have a quick
So
question.
just don't use it.
It's contained, so I think that's
Prohibited.
okay.
Go ahead,
Can I
Mike.
speak?
Yeah.
I have a quick question. We're talking about, what about, septic tanks? I mean, what about the, you know, the gray water, the black water? Is that gonna be discussed later? I mean, if your house
Yeah.
having these campgrounds, are you gonna have, is there gonna be full hookups? You're gonna have septic? If you have septic, that's very limited. If you're hooked up to our sewer, that's limited because you gotta have lift stations. Or is that gonna be discussed later? That's my question.
That's going to be discussed later regarding the septic. What's provided here is just the absolute minimum requirement for a campground to operate
Okay.
within the city, which is a charcoal grill for
Okay.
each campsite, potable water,
Okay.
and separate toilet bathing facilities for men and women.
Okay.
I like it.
Thanks for
What
the
it implies is there'll be some septic.
Yes.
Yeah, there'll be
Septic and
waste
water.
that they'll have to take care of.
Mm,
Any other discussion on this definition?
no.
Everybody's okay with what it's got.
All right. So child care center through the commission, and we'll get into the comprehensive plan in a second.
Okay, well, real quick about the campground, sorry. We do have a siren here, right? And so that warns people if there's a flood. And so people that are camping or live in the town are supposed to hear that and vacate. So the siren is an important component of the campground or the camping facility.
Depending on the-
What about any kind of warning about floods or any kind of?
We'll get to that this afternoon.
Okay.
It's foreseeable that campground wouldn't necessarily be next to the river, and so it wouldn't make sense for it to be a minimum requirement for all campground. But when we get to the rest of the regulations, it brings up that flood management.
Aspect of it. Okay, thank you.
And so Child Care Center just came directly from Health and Human Services.
Yeah,
So
that's their definition of a child care center. The previous definition allowed a home-based child care facility operation, which has a different definition under Health and Human Services than a child care center. So I want to match our definition to theirs.
You're matching it to the states?
Yeah.
So we're good there, because it came directly from there.
So-
But
so
someone
is-
could have a childcare facility in their home?
Yeah, I believe so. We'll get to that on the use table. We'll make sure that that it may be one of those things that we consider as a home occupation. And we can look at the HSS definitions during a break to make sure
Yeah,
that
I'm
we're
just,
capturing that.
so all we're just saying, oh, this is just definitions, it's just definitions, not whether or not you can have one. Okay.
Well, it says a permit holder for the childcare facility cannot have it in their home. Permit holders other than the
At a
permit
location.
holder's home. So I just wondered, a lot of people like to have a daycare center out of their home.
So we do discuss a family home daycare definition. And the difference is the number of children that are
Oh,
being
okay,
used.
okay,
So 7 or more, you're a child care center. 6 or less, you're a home daycare, family home daycare, and it has a different definition.
And those still should be, you still need to register those with the state.
Yeah.
And those, they are followed by state guidelines, not by city guidelines.
Okay.
We'll get to that definition and then it'll be included in the use table as well.
The Civic Center, I have to read it out loud, I'm sorry if it bothers you. Let's see, it doesn't. Now, Civic Center isn't necessarily, controlled by the city. Right?
Correct. It's any building used for these purposes. It's a very broad definition.
Yeah, okay.
It's a very broad definition we have there.
We have Chamber of Commerce in any definition?
Not as a land use issue. So we could have a chamber of commerce, but it wouldn't, I don't think it's worth regulating in terms of a land use issue.
Is college and university in there too?
Yeah.
Now, how do online work?
Good news is if online university wanted to have an office building here,
That would be,
all under that, I still believe. If we want to address that on a separate definition or clarify that, we can.
We reference college and university in the use table. I don't think we reference, I mean, that is a subset of that is not referenced. So wherever college and university would be allowed, theoretically, you could have a office with secretaries and other people doing stuff in a building. And I don't remember in the use table exactly where we allow that.
yeah, well, I'm not sure how they work. I would think all you
Might
need
want-
is a big
we
server
may want to
farm.
Flag that and double check when we get to the use table.
All right. Any other discussion on those? All right, moving on. Comprehensive master plan through communication tower.
Can I ask a question about the commission? There's also the historic preservation.
So in reference to this, this is particularly related just to the zoning commission, the historical parks, river, the other boards and commissions that have their own separate ordinances that they fall under.
I think communication tower is good.
All right, next definition is a condominium. So this is a replacement of the previous definition. The previous definition is there at the bottom, and that's been struck through, and then what's been added is there. And this comes from the Texas state code for condominiums under the property code. So it's using the state's definition.
The state's definition?
No.
Okay, wait a minute, let me finish reading it.
far as I know, we have none of that in the city.
I don't believe so. I'm not aware of any if we do.
The apartments down there are real nice apartments, the complex down on True Lane. There were some duplexes that were gone. I don't think we have it in the city.
It's possible you could have a duplex be a condominium in its organization, but it's pretty rare.
What is this common elements owned by a legal entity separate from the unit owners? What, I mean, what if you had like HOA fees for a swimming pool or common facilities?
So
Legal entities.
Because that
The unit.
muddles that.
They don't own the swimming pool.
no, they just that
The developer owns the swimming pool, that the HOA fees are paid for. This is like, units that have,
apartments that you own.
you own the apartment, but the entranceway and or the garages or, you know.
The swimming pool in that building.
Or the group use, and you have a vested interest in it. You actually have ownership of that piece, but not defined. In other words, you don't have a square foot defined that says that piece is mine. It is, I got an interest in all of it. They have interest in all of it, they all have equal shares of ownership.
And it's taken from the state, so I think I would recommend not changing.
I don't think we
Okay.
have any.
Next one, dance hall. And then I struck the definition of duplex to a more discrete. I've basically put it under the definition of dwelling unit. We'll see that in a second.
So wait a minute. Oh, you struck out duplex. Okay.
Yeah, and I included it within,
Got it.
as a type of dwelling unit.
Residential.
So go on to dwelling unit. Oh, here's the definition. I'll pause for questions.
I think the way that it's worded encompasses it, all to where, striking out duplex was good, so I'm good with that.
Any other comments, questions?
So if it's in the ordinance, then it'll be changed as a dwelling unit 1 or dwelling unit 4.
Yeah, we'll see that
Okay, gotcha.
in the use
Use
table,
table.
where that's
Single family
Different.
building designated for and
Jared, help me with that. There was something either in the building codes or maybe it's in the use table where the number of units in a facility or on a property was limited to 4, and then it changed. That's what this does here. This,
yeah. So on the previous definition of duplex was in the use table included up to 4 units or in other portions, and so I distinguished between a single dwelling unit, a duplex, triplex, fourplex, and then multiplex. And so that would have bearing on what's allowed within R1, R2 is a single unit or duplex potentially. And then the others would be within the like R4 or whatever it would be. So we'll see it in the use table.
So a dwelling unit, it says cooking or sanitation. Could you have rainwater collection devices or be hooked up to a well? Because we do have some homes, I think, still within the city limits that are hooked up to the well and not hooked up to their wells and not hooked up to city water.
Mm-hmm.
What if someone wanted to build something that was just a rainwater collection device on their property and not, is that getting too deep?
Yeah, so that,
Yeah.
this is specifically designed to define what a dwelling unit is and the different forms of a dwelling unit when you have attached. So a townhouse, row house, this helps define what that is. Helps define the difference between, between one apartment to the next. And so
Sanitation.
basically, are you using a shared bathroom? Are you using a shared kitchen? If you are, you're not living independent from another. So,
So that would be considered a single family.
yes.
Okay.
So we are removing the definition of duplex altogether.
Yes.
And instead using the definitions on a dwelling unit.
And actually, we are using duplex, but that's considered a two-family unit.
So a duplex, what if they don't, it doesn't matter if they share a common wall or separate structures? A duplex implies separate structures.
So duplex implies that they are,
One structure.
they share a wall with the other family unit.
Doesn't completely say that, though. Oh, a single unit.
A
I see.
dwelling
It
unit.
says a single unit for a dwelling unit, but then a duplex, it doesn't imply there if it's two, says two families, but is that two separate buildings or does it
Living
specify?
independently from each other, living independently. That's your clue.
And then the definition of living independent is provided below after the different subsets.
Where
So it's a
the,
single unit.
So the most common version I've seen of this, probably in Martindale, is a house that looks like a normal single house, but that's two front doors. And those, and it's kind of, and they live, one family lives on this side of the house, other family lives this side of the house. There's no, going between the two houses, that wall goes all the way down.
Your house is a duplex,
mine?
Ooh,
Sam's,
Sort of.
and actually mine is too. Actually, it could be a triplex.
I don't know enough about your houses.
Okay, so two families living independently. Yes, okay.
and what that means is that you cannot get from one family unit into the other family unit via a common wall or door. You have to go outside and to the other front door to enter the other dwelling.
Actually, then
Whereas-
yours probably isn't a duplex.
So Jan, your house is not a duplex because I do
Mine's a
believe
triplex.
you can go from one unit to the other inside under the roof. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then it is not a duplex or a triplex.
Well, are they able to live independently from each other? They have separate sanitary
Yes.
facilities, separate
Yes,
kitchens,
and
separate
separate
entrances,
rooms,
separate
separate doorways.
utilities.
Yes.
Then that would be considered, whether or not there's a door between them, they're able to live independent of each
Right.
other. So that
Right.
would apply. Okay, any other discussion, questions on dwelling units?
All right, the determination of whether, I'm looking at under the multiplex. The determination of whether one family is living independent or another, from the other is based on one or more of the following criteria. So one or more. It's kind of confusing because at the very end it says or separate utilities. So
Well,
you don't necessarily have to have separate utilities on,
You could have a duplex.
And
If
share.
if a single owner of a duplex had a duplex and then rented out both sides of that duplex out, he could have a single utility bill that he just
Okay.
splits between the two of them
Okay.
under his rent agreement.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
So one or more of the
That's good.
following being a separate bathroom, or a separate kitchen, or separate entrances, or separate utilities. So if you have one of those, then you are considered, if you have at least one of them, you're considered a multiple. Is that what I'm reading?
No,
Yeah.
you're considering independent living. And that applies to 1 through 5.
includes separate provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation.
Maybe
But-
I'll put a
See, I don't
space
understand.
between, a line between the multiple and the next one, just so people don't get confused thinking.
Right, the determination, and I don't know, this wording is confusing because it says separate sanitary, separate kitchen, separate entrances, or separate utilities. So is that separate
No, that's the list.
sanitary or separate kitchens or separate entrances?
That
or
or
separate-
is for
So what we
grammar.
can do is we can delete the word or,
Yeah,
Yes,
and then delete the reference to utility. Based on
or.
following
maybe separate-
criteria. Because I think there's a potential that they could all have shared utility. Sanitary facilities, kitchen facilities, and entrances, I think is pretty clear.
Yes.
agreed.
And then maybe a separate sentence saying that you can have one utility,
All right, here we go. So
one,
Or you can say not limited or not limited to.
multiple,
So here's the rewrite. Determination whether one family is living independent of another is based on the following criteria: separate sanitary facilities, separate kitchen facilities, and separate entrances.
Or what I'm reading that to say is that you can share a bathroom, you can share a kitchen, as long as you have separate entrances, you're still considered.
no,
No,
no. See, because it has and.
yeah.
Uh,
I deleted the or and made it an and.
But you put something where utilities can be combined or separated or something like that.
Just to clarify that.
I mean, if that's, yeah, I mean, you have or separate utilities, and that's just what confused me. If you want to put something in utilities, say utilities can be separated or combined or something like that. Or utility bills, you know,
Or utilities are not a factor.
say that again?
Or utilities are not a factor.
If it's not a factor, why even
Yeah,
put
why
anything
even
in
put it
about
in?
utilities? Like,
Okay.
you know, that's just like getting into
Good point.
telling somebody what they can and can't do and how they want to do it. I mean, we're getting too deep
Yeah.
into it.
So you've changed the definition here now from any one of those things, it means you're independent now, to all 3 of them have to be
Right.
independent.
Right. That was,
All three.
so you have to have, in order to be considered a duplex, your house has to have separate sanitary facilities, separate kitchen, and separate entrances. All 3 of those things, not one or more of that. So I think this is a clearer definition. I like
Yes,
this.
good, because it was confusing.
Well, good.
Okay.
All right. Equipment rental, outdoor storage, down to farm, ranch, and orchard.
Outdoor storage could be RV park, RV for storing it there.
This is I see where the clarification needs.
RV, you can store an RV and then outdoor storage.
It's a commercial establishment, so I added the word commercial just to clarify it. Commercial establishment engaged in the rental leasing of heavy construction equipment, other large items for rent stored outdoors. So think of like a tractor rental, trailer rental kind of thing. You'll see some of those. I
So
see them a lot. When
it's a commercial now.
I added the word commercial to.
Yeah, but you have and still in front of it. Put a,
Six,
just
yeah.
a commercial established. A commercial. Fishman. Okay,
Then you'll see the family home daycare, as we mentioned earlier, with the differences between that and the daycare center.
Which one?
Starting out, family home daycare for children
Oh.
and adult, but that's where that different you asked the question earlier about.
Six, not more than six in a family home.
Those were already in our code, correct?
yeah, but we're not changing those.
Right.
So let's focus on the ones we're changing.
So farm, ranch, and orchard would be the next.
Okay, land use for commercial. Raising.
What did you change from the original one, Jared?
There wasn't
There
There
wasn't.
wasn't one?
a
So this
definition.
is, okay, this is brand new.
Mhm.
It was included in our use table, but we didn't define it.
Uh-huh.
Is a bee considered a farm animal?
I would think so.
It does need to be listed in there because of it being agriculture exemption.
But not including the commercial.
They would do that in the CCAD. They would define that in the CAD if you're looking for some time
What's OFFA?
with the appraisal stuff. I don't think each little individual thing needs to be listed, like what it would need to be.
Farm animal, a bee is different than a farm animal.
I wouldn't think so.
Huh?
I wouldn't think that it would be under the current definition. I don't think a bee
Farm?
farm. I mean, depending on the scale of it, possibly.
I think of it.
It's not a usual farm animal, I wouldn't think. I'm thinking goats, pigs, horses, cows.
But would a beehives be allowed in the farm, ranch, or orchard? You
I
would
will,
think you would.
Prohibited.
it is my opinion that some reference to bees do need to be added into either this definition or a separate definition, because it is and has become in the last 10, 15 years. It's been added to what you can use land for to be ag exempt.
You're
I
correct,
believe-
Lisa.
Yes, I know. So I
Yeah.
believe it does need to be added in our
I think
code reference.
yes, I think we should.
Where's my fingers? My goodness.
Lisa, you are correct on that. I've been checking into that.
Yes,
It's become very
Alright.
popular.
it does.
I added
It does.
and bees.
Here we go. It
Good
requires-
job.
You do it, and the difference is, when you're ag exempt, you have to have for large animals, or even small animals as far as chickens and things like that, you gotta have 10 acres. For bees, you do not have to have 10 acres. So it is a big difference.
Okay, what is OFFAL?
So with her saying
Commercial
that,
feeding of
Jared, for
what?
the 10 acres for the poultry, farm animals and bees, because it's two separate land
Awful or
amounts that
garbage.
could be done, that'll be defined under.
In order to get the ag exemption, you have to have a certain amount of property, in order to qualify for the ag exemption. And bees are a component of ag exemption as well as poultry and farm animals.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily need to have Well,
You don't
that might be a
necessarily
use
have to have
table.
an ag exemption in order to have bees or chickens, though. That doesn't mean that you want that by doing that, because sometimes if it's allowed in R1 to have chickens, you're doing it because you want to have chickens, not because you've got a farm, ranch, or orchard. I mean,
I think, we, it's best applied in the use table.
it
Yeah.
is
But
implied.
but the question that city council has to consider is, do you want, if someone can grow bees on there, if there was right now in the use table, farm, ranch, and orchard is basically permitted everywhere, for the most part. Question is, if you include this, you could have somebody come in and have, you know, a cow pasture in your neighborhood. Unlikely, but possible.
So for,
So-
example, yeah, you only have to have 5 acres for bees in Texas. So for example, there are properties that are on the river that are more than 5 acres, but they are also zoned R1. So I think we should have some type of separate determination specifically for bees. And I'll get you the information as we're going along, Jared.
It's a use table issue is my point. Unless we, if everything is gonna be handled the same, if bees are gonna be handled the same as cows, the definition is fine, including bees. If we're gonna handle bees different from cows, then we should define those under separate terms for the purposes of the use table.
The way that it's stated there, it says that it's going to subject them to the same as poultry, farm animals, and
Yes.
bees. So whatever is required for those, then you need to do the same for the bees. That's how it's written now.
Correct. With this edit.
But in some cases, if you have 5 acres of land, you can have bees on it, but you cannot have cows.
Agreed.
And so that's the difference, because
Under our ordinance or under
under ag exemption or ag use of land.
so that might be for the ag exemption. But I don't know if there's a state law saying that if you only have 1 acre, you can't have a cow, for example.
I think it is. I think you have to have a minimum amount of land per head of cow. But if that was the case, then someone could have a horse on an acre in a residential area, and then everyone around them would enjoy the horse and smell it and all that too.
Exactly. Yes, that's true. Under this. So if you want to handle it differently, if you want to handle bees separate from cows, horses, pigs,
Then we'll-
then we want to have a separate definition.
I agree. We need a separate
For
definition
bees.
for bees. We do.
Okay.
And it can be a, a 1A or something underneath farm, ranch, or orchards. Or it could say farm, ranch, orchard, or bees. And then define it. Or I would make it separate, actually.
So we'll just take a note to add a bee farm definition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I guess. So this is still pretty broad.
All right. I'm gonna pause. We're at our break. Went a little bit over. We'll pause here for the break because I want to make sure we get our order in for the River Cafe. So let's go ahead. We went a little bit over. If you want to, we can take 5 minutes and get back on track at 11:10, or take the full 10 minutes. I'm open what you guys think. My suggestion is to keep on the schedule and just do a 5
I
minute,
think
quick
keep
5 minute
on
break.
the schedule.
So we'll take a 5 minute break. And then for those in the room, I'll pull up the menu if you want to get lunch from River Cafe.
That's what I was getting ready to do.
Lunch. Jared,
What's that?
lunch. So I'm
You're
included.
you're breaking up, Lisa. Say that again.
So I will order as well.
She'll order as
You
well.
gonna come down here and get it?
Yes, yes.
We'll make space.
We don't have to have this breaking up stuff on the phone.
Yeah, you're welcome to join us.
We'll see. We'll see how I'm doing.
So you just added does not include bee farm in farm, ranch, or orchard?
Nah.
Okay.
All right, so here's their menu. If you want, you can probably pull the same webpage on your cell phone and take a look at it.
You're using the same menu as what's online?
Yeah.
Can you scroll past quiche there, please?
And you're on your own for your lunch. All right, I know.
So what are we doing? We all gonna go down there and order our own, or you?
I'm gonna take the list down and put the order.
For a chicken banh mi.
For the chicken banh mi, all right.
And, an iced tea.
I'll have a turkey avocado with jalapeno dirty chip, please.
What's a drink?
No, I have a drink here. I have some water and stuff.
Sir, do you have salads?
Yeah.
Stretch your legs.
There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
salad and a citrus salad.
Okay.
So you could add chicken to it and different.
I'll take the, green. I'll take the citrus salad with the dressing on the side and an unsweet tea.
What kind of dressing on the side?
It
Oh,
says
is it just one?
MRC. What was it? MRC?
MRC, okay.
I want the fancy grilled cheese.
Fancy grilled cheese.
Okay, these people did not
Hold
read,
on, Ron, we're still.
right?
Hey, Jared. Jared,
Yes.
I just sent you mine in the chat.
Do you want me to leave your packet outside?
Yeah, that'd be great. Is it different than what I picked up yesterday?
No,
Well, then I
all
don't
the
think I,
same.
oh no, I'm good. I've got it.
That was homework.
Unless the one that's there is in color.
No, the color is on your screen when he's going through it.
I got it. I got that. I'm good.
Did you want sweet or unsweet tea?
It's unsweet.
Unsweet.
Can I get unsweet also? I want it unsweet.
think everything he gives is unsweetened. You have to pick up a packet, sweeten it up.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Putting us back on mute.
Mike,
Yes.
They
Hello?
can't hear you, Mike. They can't hear you.
he's responding.
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
did you want to order
Yes.
food from the cafe?
No, I'm fine. I had breakfast already. I'm fine, thanks.
I have a date in mind for the cleanup, Rob.
Okay. I put you on the agenda for the 16th, next Tuesday, to fill everybody in on what they want, what you need.
I got a date and I got a backup date. So you don't know what movie's gonna be here tonight? What they're filming?
What's the name of it, Marisol or something like that?
Oh, really?
I said it was the Walker, Texas Ranger, wasn't it?
Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah, it's the new one on Fox.
What?
Oh, is that what you're filming? What's that Marisol that I got on the thing?
Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know.
That's
And this is
exciting.
Texas Rangers, or what did you say?
It was Walker, Texas Ranger. Shoot somebody with something.
Shoot 'em up.
Shoot 'em up.
That's right, because I read in that paper that they're gonna use the fire department with like an explosive.
They're gonna have fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
I asked the lady, "Can I see it from my house?" Like spread out a blanket and have a picnic.
That's right.
I think they're gonna end up, they said they were gonna have to shoot somebody with what amounted to like a bottle rocket, but
Like a
whether
what?
pyrotechnic. I think the fireworks piece of it came from the fact that they used a Roman candle as a example of the type of explosion that's gonna take place. They just said it was kind of like a big Roman candle, so that turned into fireworks, and I don't believe they're gonna be shooting off fireworks into the sky. They're gonna end up shooting somebody, some stunt man with a little bit of an explosion to try to knock him off his feet or something. I don't know. I don't believe you'll be seeing anything from your house, but you might hear it.
How is tonight, how is the filming going to affect the businesses downtown? Will people still be able to either go to the cafe or the grocery store, or are they having to close?
They're closing, no cafe's closing.
Cafe, Cindy said the cafe's closing. Grocery store, I don't think is. They're not open. I think it doesn't really get going until after dark. So.
Yeah, he was excited, he was gonna have an evening
Oh,
with the family.
with the family.
Have you heard anything about the Jamaicas? They're not having the Jamaica?
So far, we're not. So far, we're not having one. But I think if father hears, then he can take it to the diocese if people are interested, but as far as I know, we're not having one.
Hey, Sylvia, do you have any idea what the Catholic Church is building or making back in the back? Are they doing something for Easter that they're building or making a structure?
No, they're not making any structure that I know of.
There's been and I haven't gone back there to look, but there's a, for
I mean, they're making a fried fish every Friday. That's probably why you see all those people.
yeah, and then I'm talking about here, like either sawing or grinding. I hear some type of construction type sounds.
No, I don't know, but I mean, if you know something, let us know on Monday.
No, I can look next time I hear the sound. I just thought you might know.
Girl, go look through your fence and
I
see
know
what's going on.
You live right there.
Go look. Come on now.
All right, we're back on it.
Okay.
What? Go look through the fence.
Okay, where are
We are on financial institution, which is too long of a definition within the Texas Financial Code to copy it, so I just put the reference. Because there's a lot of different types and regulations and yada, yada, yada. So the easiest way to me was to reference their definition. And then we have the fraternity, sorority house, fraternal or philanthropic organization, and funeral home.
So we're good there, right? Now we're on to governmental buildings.
So you're saying a fraternity or sorority house, they're all sharing the same kitchen?
Typically,
Okay.
And the difference here that I added as difference from the reference was that it has to be recognized by a post-secondary educational institution. So you just can't call yourself a fraternity or sorority.
thank you.
Drug requires have to be recognized by Texas State or somewhere else. All right, so going on down.
Okay, can I read funeral home really quick? Okay, thank you. Okay.
All right, going down gable roof through guest house, and guest house is probably the one that we were referencing earlier about the separate in-law suite kind of thing. And this becomes important when it gets to subdividing and the requirements to do so. and a secondary building on your lot. So a guest house is a single attached or detached accessory unit containing no kitchen or cooking facilities used to house guests and occupants of the principal building, which is not rented separately. So,
Gotta have a bathroom though, you're saying.
yeah, I mean, you'd have to, you can have a bathroom. It doesn't put any regulation on it. The key here is, and I didn't address it on purpose, is the not rented separately.
That's-
So
What do you mean by that?
that's for the council to decide. Do you want to include that provision to prohibit the use of renting a guest house under a short-term rental or even I think it makes sense. You don't want it to be a long-term rental because there's not a kitchen facility, and that wouldn't be, I don't believe that'd be appropriate.
Okay,
But
let
as
me
a
ask
short-
you this. Let me, just for clarification, this is the definition that was already in our code, correct?
The only difference was I clarified where it once said an attached or detached accessory unit. I further clarified that as a single attached or detached. The meaning didn't change, but I felt the clarification would help.
Meaning that your guest house could
It's a
not be
single
by
building.
definition a duplex.
no
Is that what you
kitchen.
mean?
Say that again.
A guest house, no, because the duplex would have a kitchen or cooking facility.
Yeah, because it's
So
separate.
what about? That was,
You're breaking up, Lisa.
What about farmers?
well, what if it's a guest house and it does have a kitchen?
Then that's a second unit,
That's a,
and that's a separate dwelling. And per our current ordinance of one dwelling per lot, that unit would have to be subdivided onto its own lot in accordance with the zoning setbacks and everything else.
But mother-in-law units are allowed in R1.
Yeah, I think we need to address that.
But
We
But,
we'll learn at the use table.
well, it depends on how you go. So here's the thing. You may have, in your conceptualizing of a mother-in-law unit, does it have a kitchen?
Yeah,
It could, yes.
Okay. Right now, even under our current ordinance, if it exists within the city, it is a continued non-conforming use. But if somebody wanted to come in and build one, they would not be allowed to do so.
So you're saying built prior to a certain date, it's
Built prior to 2008, under this ordinance, it would be allowed. Anything since then would not be allowed. Even today, it would not be allowed. If some,
2008, and it may go further back than that.
yeah, it could go back. I would have to reference the 97. It might even be in the 97 proposed ordinance.
But it would seem like if you had a guest house, even that didn't have a kitchen, that you could rent it out and then the people could share a kitchen. I mean, that happens all the time with VRBO or whatever. I mean, it's not
say what you
that,
think.
it's not like you have to have a separate kitchen just to rent out a guest house, because sometimes.
The difference between, this is where there's a distinction between a guest house and a dwelling. Under the previous definitions of a dwelling, it would include a kitchen. And the definition of a guest house is something other than a dwelling that people can sleep in.
Yes,
Right.
under the bathroom.
It's an accessory unit to the property. When we get to the zoning and we start talking about residential districts, and you can only have one dwelling per plot, then you cannot have a second dwelling on that same plot. You would have to subdivide your property to have that second house, and it'd stand alone.
And so I have a
You
question.
can have as many guest houses as you want,
Just one.
just one. Okay.
Guest house, a single.
Depends.
now. Before, if we make this change, it's one.
No, even before, it said "and" attached, and I just clarified the word "and" to a
Oh,
single.
I see. So a single attached.
I don't read it that way.
Now,
but
whether
this-
or
this
not-
clarifies that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, but I believe you could have more than one. In
I
fact, I
think-
think you could have had up to 4 based on another section somewhere else, if you wanted to.
Okay,
But
But I still don't see why you couldn't have a short-term rental at a guest house.
that's for the city council to decide.
Discuss. So let's do. I think that's what you were trying to clarify.
Yeah, but even in R1, isn't it currently based on the size of the lot in R1 that you can have a mother-in-law unit, one separate structure, a smaller
You
structure?
can have you can have an attached or detached accessory unit that contains no kitchen or cooking facilities used to house guests of the occupants of the principal building.
In R1.
Well, I'd have to refer to the use table,
Yes,
but
yes. Where
In
does the
R1.
definition?
in R1. So an accessory use does not include a dwelling. This is a dwelling, for all intents and purposes, is a second house. You can't have two houses on one plot.
Right.
So if I may
Yeah.
ask a question, so like with this, like, you know how a lot of people now are buying those little storage units and moving them on their property and converting them into like an extra room or into an extra little tiny home or whatever? Would that be allowed as a guest house?
If it doesn't, if it has a kitchen in it, no.
Yeah.
If it has a
If it does-
bathroom and sleeping area, that'd be fine. If it has a sink and a microwave, you're probably okay.
So as long as
The
it
bathroom
did,
will probably have
as
a
long
sink.
as it did not have a kitchen or cooking facilities, it could be like a, used as an extra bedroom. outside.
It would be an approved accessory use as a guest house.
Gotcha.
But I feel like that you could still use it as a short-term rental. I don't know. What do y'all think?
Yes, that
Yes.
you should be, yes, that you should be able to rent it out on a short-term basis, even though it doesn't have a kitchen, because people would want to come and stay overnight and then come down to the restaurant and all that and not even care about cooking, you know? Some people want to come and stay and
Go out to
not
eat.
worry about cooking and buying food. That's what they don't want to do. They
It's
want
like
to come
staying in
and
a hotel. It's like staying in a hotel.
Say that again?
It's
like
like
staying in a hotel.
Right.
But they would use their restroom in your house.
No,
And
you
they cannot stay.
can have a restroom in there.
You can have a restroom, it just can't have a kitchen.
You
Just a restroom, no kitchen.
can have a
No.
restroom, a sink, a refrigerator, a
Okay.
microwave,
Which could be rented separately.
but
Yes.
on a short-term basis,
Could be
not a
rented
long-term
separately on a
basis.
short-term basis, because nobody would want to live in a house for long-term.
As
Well,
a
a lot of
city,
times if you have a guest house and nobody's using it, a lot of times it gets neglected, so.
Yeah, as a city, I think it would not be appropriate to allow long-term rentals of that sort of structure because it's not
I
a
agree.
dwelling.
Short-term.
But short-term, I think.
So,
it's
so we got short-term, yes, Sylvia or Sonia,
Lisa,
Lisa,
Yes. Yes.
okay. And,
Mike?
Mike,
Yeah, it sounds fine, short term only, yeah.
So I have a quick question just for, full-on clarification. So if you have a lot that is 1 acre and currently you have 1 dwelling and 1 accessory building, storage or whatever, and you subdivide that lot because by definition and by our code, you have to have a 1/2 acre for a lot. So if you cut that lot in half, technically you could build another main dwelling and another guest house. Is that correct?
yes,
Got it.
I think
I thought that half acre restriction was more so during the days when we were on septic tanks, and that you did not want to have 2 units on, say, 1 acre or less than, 1 acre, then you would have 2 because of septic tanks. Because
That could be the history of it, but right now, that under our Wilcox districts is our next subject. Right now, the R1 district for single dwelling is a half acre.
Okay.
To do with-
So as
that
you
has to do
just
with
said, if
what-
it's an acre, you can split it in 2 and build 2.
As long as, and you still have to meet the different setbacks for that, that's required.
Okay.
And everybody's okay with governmental building? We didn't really discuss that one.
Yeah. So what this would imply is that if the city council or the city were to rent a building during the period that that's being rented, it would be considered a governmental building as well. All right, going on down, we have a pretty lengthy definition of heavy industry, but nothing has changed. Unless anybody wants to address that, I think we can continue to keep going for sake of time. Home occupation, this one likely will come up in the future potentially. The key here, I just want to point out because it could become an issue that council has to weigh in on some point in the near future. Is any occupation or profession carried out by the inhabitants of a dwelling, which is clearly an incidental secondary use for the structure. So if you have employees showing up at your house for their occupation, that would not be allowed. It's only for inhabitants of that dwelling.
But if it's a multi-use zoning in the historic district and you want to have a hair salon there, and then you would have someone come in and cut hair, because we do have multi-use designations in homes in the historic district.
So there's a couple. First, we don't have a multi-use, we have a mixed use.
Mixed use, yeah.
Mixed use has a specific connotation. We'll get to it when we get to the districts, but it wouldn't apply. If someone wants to cut hair in their house, they can do that with this, not an issue. If they have a salon in their house where they have 3 or 4 people in there, coming in there, cutting hair and then going home as employees, that's not allowed. So they have to live at the dwelling if they're going to be cutting hair.
So you're saying we need to go back and look at the home occupation later?
I just wanted to point this out because it could become an issue with it. There's a potential that certain properties within the city are getting very close to this line of whether it's a home occupation or not, regarding their business that they're running.
Occupational profession.
And the main point here is inhabitants. I think this is a good definition, but if we're looking at definitions, I want to, while we're here, to step on it.
And like he used hair salon as an example. What if somebody wanted to open up, you know how they're doing the CBD shops now and sell flour? Or what if somebody wanted to do, a different tea room or, something like that? So it doesn't only fall under like hairdressing. It could be like different businesses that.
Ice cream manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
Or Porsche repair, or things that are really kind of going on as a city. As long as
You're making
they don't
crafts and
have
selling it,
an employee, they just do it all themselves, it's okay.
The trick is that no trading in merchandise. So you can't, basically you can't sell wares out of your house. So
It is,
CBD,
So not
you couldn't
even
be a-
online?
You couldn't be a dispensary out of your house.
I have a comment, and this might clarify.
But
It's
this,
understanding that when you have a home occupation, be it an office, or whatever your business is, it has to do with the fact that you do not have street traffic. You do not have there's no parking needed. It's not going to change any of the character of the street or the actual location, as in other residents and neighbors would not necessarily even know that you have a home occupation. That's my understanding.
So it's got two questions. We got one about homes that have drive-throughs, like a drive-through restaurant. Or drive-through restaurants are covered under a separate definition and permitting or, use process. The other thing that this lays out is if someone wants to run an Etsy store, run an eBay sort of thing,
You can do
that
that.
might be something that wasn't envisioned as clearly in 2008 as it might be now with the growth of those online marketplaces. I think the intention of this is, as Lisa pointed out, not to create traffic in a neighborhood for somebody frequenting the store.
It doesn't matter what you do inside.
So we
I
might,
don't think that's what that says, and certainly you didn't think that's what that said. You brought it up that no trading of any merchandise.
so I think we need to clarify that if there's online sales, that's permitted.
Well, even not online, so we got a cake manufacturing lady here. She builds cakes in her home.
Yeah.
sells them. We got
Right.
tamale makers that are kind of
Yeah.
seasonal, but nobody gripes about those.
Oh, and what that has
Yeah,
to do
just
is-
trading in merchandise. What if you sell clothes and, or sew clothes? Huh?
Avon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Out of your home,
I
Tupperware
mean,
party,
it's
Tupperware party.
home
What is that?
occupation,
That's dated, but.
try to trade and make money kind of thing, right?
Right, so currently those, if under the enforcement, they would not be allowed.
Well, I don't
Shoot.
think that's
Fix it.
right.
That's what y'all are here for. Go fix it.
Yeah.
I think you should delete that whole sentence.
Is making food out of their
Yeah.
house, selling it, and people picking it up, is that allowed?
It would have to fall under the cottage kitchen law. So under the cottage kitchen law, you cannot sell things from your house that needs to be refrigerated, that is not temperature cooled. You could only say sell
Jar.
bread. You could sell
Cakes.
Pickles.
cookies. And it has to have a label,
Oh.
and it has to,
And what it has?
yes.
And do you have to have health?
sealed.
It falls under the cottage kitchen laws for the state of Texas. So you are allowed to sell stuff as cottage kitchen, markets, you can sell it
Out of your-
online, and do that, but it just has to follow the criteria that's set forth by the state.
So pies that are refrigerated, cakes and pies would be
Anything
okay?
that needs to be temperatured, no, is a no.
You,
Anything that
state,
you
you can
cannot,
have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, she answered my question, Lisa.
And would it have to have a commercial kitchen?
it does not have to have a commercial kitchen. Your kitchen is not subject to inspection. Just like with anybody, if you buy something and there's a complaint, you complain to the state of Texas. But if you look under the cottage kitchen laws of Texas, it tells you everything that you can and cannot do.
Correct. And if you go to like farmers markets and stuff, then you'll notice that even the cookies have some kind of label
Mhm.
on it. So, and that can be looked up. Anyway, but I say, yes, let's get rid of that, no trading merchandise. Anybody else?
Well, I mean, is money merchandise?
Money merchandise, no.
So no trading.
Well, that means purchase, that's selling. Trading means selling.
Yeah,
I give you a pair of jeans and you give me a carton of eggs. It means selling.
yeah.
And Lisa seems to think that the original
Trade
intent of
money.
that portion of this was to keep traffic down in the areas, and there's nothing wrong with that. So maybe it needs to be replaced with, all traffic must be maintained on site. City streets not to be used for customers, or something, but that gets to the heart of it.
So provided,
Home
traffic in and
occupation.
out of the home is,
What if somebody in their home has a garage in the back and they're fixing cars or equipment or whatever? That's the person that lives in the home on the property and has an accessory dwelling and then fixes vehicles.
That'd be fine, as long as it's only the inhabitants of that dwelling.
And has no employee.
Here's the other part that you have to realize intertwines. So if somebody is going to fix cars, do they have one car inside of a garage that they're working on and 3 more stacked up on blocks waiting to be worked on? That's the part that changes the way that everything looks. That then becomes
right,
a different type of business.
Well, I mean, like, we can't pick and choose, like how they conduct it. Like, if that's the case, then, that would be a complaint to the city about that. But we can't pick and choose what home occupations can and cannot take place.
right. That's getting into too much detail.
We can look at what the
But
state.
we're trying to come up with some wording that might, say.
So the concern is,
That traffic is maintained somehow, in a orderly manner or something.
That's still so broad.
Yes.
I'd almost say delete that last sentence.
Yeah.
all right, delete it from Sam, Jan,
Yes, delete it.
Lisa,
Agreed.
agreed, okay. Sonia, yep. Mike?
Yeah, delete it, I agree.
All right, there we go. That's good. That provides some clarity. All right, hospital, hotel, and HUD manufactured home.
How did you come up with, oh, that was already written in for hotel 5 or more? Okay. So if you have 4, it's not considered a hotel.
Correct.
Back to that.
Multi.
Classified as a
Multi-
hotel and motel. 5 or more uses. Okay, fine for units. There's one in the hotel room, yes, okay. It's motel. But home.
All right, any comments on these? Moving along.
Gymnasium.
All right,
It looks like there's a misspelled word. And
Okay, where?
I'm looking at that's under indoor recreation, entertainment and amusement.
I don't know what a natatorium is.
Swimming? Is that a swimming place?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Natatorium?
Mhm.
Huh.
There's our word for the day, Sam.
Yeah. Landscape
So-
area, there's previous is misspelled.
Oh, so industrial would
Pervious.
be defined under modular. Okay.
Well, that's how you start on a bouncing ball on the way down.
Hmm.
All right,
All right.
scrolling down, land use plan. Oh, the comment was raised earlier about what's an industrial dwelling. It's modular dwelling, and so we'll get to modular dwelling here in a second. So land use plan down through library.
So on light industry, if you did have beehives and then stored the honey there, that would be considered light industry because you're distributing products?
Or would it be home occupation?
It would be home occupation in that sense. If
Yeah.
you're distributing products and you've got either foot traffic or people, like you have hours open from 9 to 5 and people can come and park and come inside of your facility and shop around.
If you have like a bottling plant, like a small little bottling operation, it'd probably fall under the light industry.
Okay.
Continuing on, loft apartment down to manufactured home subdivision. I want to point out that we already have a definition for a manufactured home park, separate from RV park.
Could you, library, could you have a chamber of commerce in a library? Based on that definition, edit,
A chamber of commerce is an organization, how they conduct their business and where they conduct their business. If it's their own administrative office, it would fall under the current commercial zone.
What do we call
a chamber of commerce in the library.
That's an organization, so we don't regulate an organization necessarily in the land use area. The land use, what, if the Chamber of Commerce wants to use the library for their meetings, that's up to them and the library.
I see, okay.
I think like if it's also, if the city like funds the library 100% and the city funds the Chamber of Commerce and it's a paid entity from the city, then you could do that.
Or at that point, it'd be a government building,
Yeah.
and you can decide what they want to do there. All right.
Typically, chambers of commerce are separate from the city. They're not, that's my understanding. They're separate. They're like a business.
The city of Lockhart has their Chamber of Commerce.
You're telling me the city of Lockhart owns and funds?
They fund the Chamber of Commerce, yes,
They fund, actually, there's two of them. They give them both money,
yes,
but they are not a city department.
but they do get money from them.
Yes.
I think San Marcos does too.
San Marcos has a Chamber of Commerce, but again, it's not a city department, I don't believe. I know for a fact the ones in Lockhart are not. I'm pretty sure San Marcos is, but they get funds from the city.
Mhm.
All right, continue on, mobile home.
Manufactured, oh, is that?
Yeah,
that's not-
loft or apartment, I
Yeah.
read-
Speak, Jan.
All right, it's an accessory use of a building in the mixed use or C1 commercial district. Now, why are we now going already kind of defining where a loft apartments in certain zones are defined in the definition and not in the land use table?
It's a very good point.
Accessory use of a building, I have to read it out loud, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Read it.
How is a loft apartment different from a garage apartment? Because it says the first floor of the building is used for non-residential purposes, so you could have a garage apartment be defined by that definition of what a loft
Yeah,
apartment.
but that would be a dwelling one,
Yeah,
or dwelling A or whatever. Okay.
that'd
loft
be
apart- is an
some sort of
accessory-
separate dwelling. The reason for this is loft apartment was,
First floor of the building is
specified
used for
within our use
non-residential
table.
Purposes.
this is a definition that
Or
I came up with.
provided.
It makes it
One
real
or
hard to
more
hear what's
dwelling
going
units.
on with your thing and your Jan reading your phone.
Yeah, sorry.
It's-
Okay, so Jan, have you finished
Yes.
reading this? And you got a proposal. You say why? You're happy with the way it is? Yes, no, loft apartment.
The reason why this is distinguished from a other form of use is because a typical apartment building would be a multiplex structure, right? The multiple
Mhm.
dwelling units. A loft apartment is what you frequently see in urbanized areas where it's in a mixed use district where you have commercial on a first floor and additional floors are apartments above it. The traditional sense of a loft apartment is basically repurposing a commercial industrial space and turning it into an apartment. That's kind of where it derives from.
Well, you may have to specify then and say commercial or non-residential purposes, because you could have a garage underneath the loft apartment that would be non-residential purpose. If you have a garage underneath it and you're saying it would be a commercial use on the first floor.
Like a
Garage
garage.
used for residential purpose.
In most
What you-
cases, unless it's like a garage for public use, like a public garage.
Unless you've got a
So,
business running out of it.
Well, non-residential could imply either a garage or a commercial use then.
No, a garage is typically attached or detached accessory use.
But what if you've got a loft that's got a garage beneath it?
And then now you have a second, does it have its own kitchen and everything? Now you have no, likely you're gonna have a duplex scenario on your hands.
It's got a kitchen, then it becomes a dwelling, right?
Yep.
But so say it doesn't have a kitchen, because there's several of those around.
It's gonna be just like what's gonna be across the street. The
Right.
Mexican restaurant, the loft upstairs,
Yep.
commercial downstairs,
Just
loft
like what we
upstairs.
have at Martindale, we have the cleaners downstairs and then we have rental upstairs. That would be.
But I think Sam's point is that throughout the city, or a number of places throughout the city, you have these old garages that people built a room for the kids above them, right? And people use those today. They're renting them out. They do all kinds of stuff.
That'd be a guest house, that'd be part of the main dwelling, or be a separate dwelling.
So if it has and a lot of these are old, so a lot of them are grandfathered in. They're pre-1982 or 84, whenever the first zoning thing came about. But if somebody wanted to go build one now, put a garage in and put an apartment above it that has a bedroom and a bathroom,
No kitchen.
no kitchen, that is
A guest house.
a guest house, and they're allowed.
Unless it shares the same entrances and things, then it'd probably just be part of the main structure of the house. If the garage is
It'd be a
detached,
guest-
it'd be considered a guest house.
And
that
if
would be
it
like
has a
guest
kitchen,
room.
so it becomes a new dwelling, they're okay to do that, provided they go put it on its own lot.
Correct. Or that's zoned for being allowed to have a duplex.
But if it's
Well,
detached, it's not a duplex.
It's a separate structure.
Is it attached or detached?
Detached.
Yeah, you'd have to put it on its own lot.
That would be a
If they're
dwelling.
building that. Okay, and now the other question that came up that we didn't answer for anybody is the mixed use of C1 in the definition. It looks to me like we don't need that, right? That's covered.
That's a good point. We don't, it's a use table issue. We can delete that.
So
Yeah,
you're,
'cause you can have a loft apartment
Basically, deleting,
house.
you're
um,
striking it.
Outdoor house.
striking in the mixed use or C1 commercial district, I'm striking that. And so it'd read an accessory use of a building where the first floor of the building is used for non-residential purpose.
Yes.
Okay.
So you could have a loft apartment in R1 if it was bigger than an acre
You could have a loft apartment.
in R1.
Sure.
Because you just deleted the specifications of C1 and mixed use, so then you're saying that.
No, you go to the table.
Oh,
This is just the definition.
okay. So yeah, then,
Yeah.
okay, then we'll look at loft apartment where they're allowed later.
Right.
Okay.
See HUD manufacturing, okay.
Just want to point out, we do have an existing definition for manufactured home park. No changes I saw there.
So a manufactured home is different than a mobile home because it doesn't have wheels on it?
The difference is the 1976 HUD code. That's the distinction between a mobile home and a manufactured home. Basically, everything built after 76 had to apply to the HUD regulations. At that point, the distinction is that's a manufactured home, not a mobile home.
And the bottom line of that has to do with electrical and fire safety stuff that they're built with. So it doesn't have anything to do with whether they're on wheels and axles. It doesn't have anything to do with whether they can be moved in or moved out.
You're right, Lisa, that came from the old mobile homes, used aluminum wiring. It was a fire hazard. They had to go to copper.
Correct.
That's what, yeah.
So
I
here's,
I think in our city specifically, one particular house, I think was able to, I think somebody was confused by the definition between mobile home and manufactured home. But it was, anyway, I won't get into that. Never mind.
so the next one, continue on, modular dwelling. This is where that definition you talked about shipping containers would likely fall in.
Okay. Hold on, permanent.
So it would have to meet those regulations, and whether a shipping container home would do that or not, I don't know. If we want to exclude shipping containers explicitly, it would make sense to include the statement along these lines.
Well, if you're gonna live in a shipping container and if you're gonna live in it, it has to, just like a house, it would have to comply to all of those regulations as if it was a house.
Or even silos and whatever other novel structure you want to make it.
So on this one, like say if it was a tiny home, but they build it someplace else and then bring it and put it on a permanent structure, that would be okay. That would fall under this,
Modular home, right?
a tiny home.
I would have to read the regulations on whether that would count as a modular home or a manufactured.
Hey, Jared, my sister built a modular dwelling, and it was like for example, they had a foundation, and the walls were pre-built at the factory and brought in with 18-wheelers, and they had a crane, and they literally built it on site, but all the components were manufactured at a separate site. So it's almost like a site-built home, except the framing and the walls are prefabbed. But it's like that's what I kind of understand what a modular home would be, possibility.
That makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, because I'm looking into that myself.
But I mean, also now, just with that, there's some homes like that have the walls, that have everything in them, but they're big enough to be brought in on a trailer and they set it on a permanent foundation.
That'd probably qualify. That'd probably qualify. I'd have to look into what the licensing regulations are.
So you're saying that's an example of a manufactured home that would be brought to the site and then put on a foundation?
Yeah, I mean,
Because this says it's not a manufactured home.
there is builders that build tiny homes or they build out shipping containers. They bring them already done. You put them on the foundation and then they're anchored to the foundation or whatever, just like it is. What Mike was saying is that they did the build someplace else, but now as we're going forward into the future, tiny homes is, big in some communities. Just like there is a subdivision for the modular homes, I think we also need to realistically address tiny homes now as well.
There might be a way of doing that under the garden home or patio home design, but let's
Okay.
write that down.
Because, yeah, I
What?
would consider her tiny home to be a manufactured home.
So a
Or-
tiny
yeah,
house, is viewed as a space consisting of 100 square feet to 400 square feet.
That's defined somewhere
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I'll send it to you. And
in our ordinance.
Jared,
No,
Jared,
we can-
Jared.
define it in our ordinance.
What's that?
No,
I think we'll get the use table, but I don't think we'll have a need for it.
Jared, Jared, one quick comment. I believe most tiny homes are brought in on wheels, like a mobile home or a
Right.
manufactured home. It's brought
Like
in
a
by
shed.
wheels, which is a modular would be. There's nothing brought in on wheels. It's actually that the walls and everything else are prefab, but the house is built on site, pretty much with all the prefab.
Okay.
Like I think a lot of KB homes, for example, are built that particular way. A lot of them are already the walls and all that stuff already built. Okay.
Yeah, I would think it would be under
But
Seems-
see, like,
a
when,
mobile home.
Seems like you'd have to delete that as not a manufactured home.
I think
that is correct.
I would strike that out almost, because manufactured homes are prefabricated that are, as we have said, brought to the site.
Yeah.
Pre-manufactured and put on a foundation.
The wiring is already there. The plumbing is already there. The insulation is already there.
okay, so what's the recommended change?
I'd say strike that is not a manufactured home. Modular dwelling, I mean, because we're saying that manufactured homes are brought to the site and then put on a foundation. Manufactured
Well-
homes, tiny,
I think what Mike's saying is right, though. We talk about being assembled.
Mhm.
There's no
Somewhere else.
assembly
Yeah.
manufactured home.
Yeah, a manufactured home is a upgraded mobile home due to safety concerns like aluminum wiring and better quality of workmanship. So basically, you're right, Jared. It's brought in on wheels, the whole structure, whereas a modular home would be bought in pieces and put on a slab.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Modular.
I think that's what basically. Well, yeah, I mean, they can actually on manufactured homes, they can actually put it on a foundation too. They can remove the wheels and put it on a foundation. But I think you need to clarify it. Being a modular and a manufactured home are totally separate entities.
That makes sense to me. So the context of a tiny home shed, what that would apply for, most of the time I see those is on manufactured home lots in terms of like being sold.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they're,
Yeah,
they're
Not mobile home.
we need to have it tiny homes by definition in our list of definitions.
I did not hear the first part of that, Lisa.
We need to have tiny homes defined in our definitions.
I don't know if it's necessary is my concern, is if they fall under the HUD laws, then,
For clarification purposes, I have way too many people ask me questions about it. We do not have it defined. And there are definitions out there.
So maybe
Okay.
under mobile home, we can say this includes tiny homes.
I think that's one I'll take for action and come back to council with a definition of tiny home.
because
What about instead of assembled, it's affixed?
is what?
Affixed,
That the home becomes a fixed permanent.
yes.
Yes.
No, and here,
I want to look into it because I haven't read these regulations, these different acts and
Yeah,
state department licensing. Let me look into that. That probably provides clarity on this issue.
Mhm.
And then I'll come back with it.
Okay.
And I think just like the word.
Sounds good to me.
And affixed.
just need to throw this in for Jared whenever you do your homework. the house that is in between Mike Clabb's house and Lorraine Harrison's house, that was put on that lot after all of this after all of this zoning code was put into place. That is truly by definition a triple wide house, as in manufactured home, brought in 3 separate parts. And that should not have been allowed in that R1. So that
How long has it been there?
specifically is why I believe we need to make sure that these are incredibly clear definitions.
I would agree with you on that, I mean, you can even have 2-story manufactured homes.
And
I've
the
seen,
tiny
so-
house, by definition is not a manufactured home. I don't think it needs to be under the same thing as a manufactured home or even a modular dwelling. I think it needs to have its own definition.
Okay, I think that would add a lot of clarity.
Correct.
All right, so continuing on, multifamily, museum, non-conforming building and lot and use.
Museum is spelled wrong.
Yeah, no, that didn't look right.
Museum.
Check.
Yeah, that's good.
So this is where, as we go into adopting zoning updates, that this non-conforming use lot building was something to be familiar with. We don't need to go into it deeply, but basically, if it existed before the ordinance, it can continue that use.
That's saying basically grandfathered in?
Yeah, it's the grandfather in kind of thing.
Oh. Do you need to include a date with that or no? Okay.
Nursing home, office, health, legal, professional services, parsonage. Likely something like Sam, to your continuing point about a chamber of commerce would fall in this office, health, legal, professional service sort of thing.
Okay.
Then we have the parks and recreation.
Okay, parsonage, at the Three Rivers Church, they have the old parsonage house and sometimes they let people live there, families, other than the priest or the minister. If a needy family needs to live in the parsonage house, then the church allows that. Is currently allowing
I
that.
would steer clear away from us being involved in who's using that.
Agreed.
But you're saying it there, you're saying it's only limited to priests or ministers.
I think it needs to say something about just being owned by a church. Or
Owned
Yeah,
and
you're telling them
managed
what
by
a church can do then,
church.
which isn't right,
All right, that's good. Good point.
resident owned and managed by
by the church.
by the religious institution.
Yeah.
You have to realize that churches have regulations that are separate that actually exclude them in different areas from certain regulations. I think that's where whoever said we need to be careful.
I think that's
That's
There,
enough.
just say, yeah, residents owned by a religious institution, and then let them figure out what they're gonna do.
So then if we get I'm just being devil's advocate, but if we get a halfway house with, people that have passed, then we need to be willing as a community to go ahead and say, okay,
You mean a parsonage being used as a halfway house?
Some are. There's some people that use them as halfway houses. There's some people, if people are trying to integrate back into the community, it could be people with records. So, I mean, you
So
know,
you don't want people with
But
records
then
to
we're
live
specifying
here?
what their use is.
Not in the parsonage, they don't need one.
I know that some churches help out people that have records that may include drug abuse, family domestic violence, sexual abuse, different things like that. So, I mean, you know, a parsonage is it may fall under something else, but like I said, I'm just playing devil's advocate and just bringing it out there.
This was a Merriam-Webster Google definition.
Uh-huh.
That's what that was.
But I mean, currently though, we do have a parsonage that's not being used by the priests or the ministers. And if we have this, then we're telling the church,
We say intended, for intended use.
Well, they use the parsonage as a
Three
Sunday school.
Rivers Church,
But that's their new pastor.
living in the house with the kids?
Yeah.
Oh. I
It
thought-
is now, but they, of course, used it for other things in the past. I don't think we need to
Right,
limit
you
it
stayed in it.
to priests or ministers, but I do think you probably ought to limit it to,
A
a
resident.
use identified, or accepted, or approved in the use table. In other words,
Uh-huh.
that's in an R1 zone down there, isn't it?
Yes, Yes.
No, it's in you, but even so, you wouldn't want them to go turn it into
Here's an idea. We delete the definition, delete it out of the use table, and it's considered a dwelling, or it's considered a boarding house,
Yeah,
or it falls under those definitions.
that would be good.
okay,
Yeah.
that's probably even better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Deleting the definition and deleting it out of the use table.
Parsonage completely.
Yes.
Do we, yeah, well, it's in there, though.
yeah, it's a parsonage,
But it's in the use table.
It's in the use table.
Right, we'll delete it out of the use table.
Uh-huh.
right, it's just a dwelling.
But then we're opening it up for them to be able to do whatever they want with it.
it has to
So they would fall
conform
under
to
the-
whatever zone
under
it-
the-
Regulations
Yeah.
of a single dwelling.
Yeah, it would have to conform with whatever zone it is in.
That way it doesn't like give us your concern about a priest or somebody else staying there. That way they could utilize it how
Like,
they see.
like the
How they would.
like one, the parsonage that we have in Ulan, that's opened up to priests, visiting missionaries, but all that is handled through the diocese.
Yeah,
Mhm.
They go and they, do the background and all that, so,
In that case, they're
Yeah.
not renting it.
yeah.
They're, that's something, so I don't,
let churches
they
do
can
their
basically do whatever they want.
own thing, yeah.
As long as it fills within the.
That's probably the best thing.
Yes,
Delete
That's
it.
good, yeah.
All right, Parks and Recreation,
Okay.
patio home, personal services, area.
So a patio home can have a kitchen?
and
Yes.
Patio home,
Doesn't- Go ahead, Lisa.
a patio home, garden homes and patio homes are typically defined by definition according to the lot line. The
Yeah.
setbacks would be different. In other words, your density becomes greater in areas where you allow patio and or garden homes. That's where people don't really have a yard.
Yeah, so it's a
oh,
detached structures that are very dense and that often they're zero lot line homes. You'll see a reference because that it abuts the property line.
so, yeah,
So-
it covers all of the property.
Yes. It's a
Well, that's what they're
tiny little
doing in
plots.
Houston.
It's something that if you zoned it in provides housing density and possibly, house.
Yeah, all the houses become row houses.
Affordability benefits and things to have that considered.
So just to ask,
Not allowed hardly anywhere, so.
Right,
Oh,
currently.
okay, it's not allowed.
Well, we'll get to the use table, but it's,
Established
I think it's
home.
R4 is the only place it's allowed.
Currently it's on R4, you're proposing to put it in R3, and that's not much of that either, so.
I will tell you, patio homes and garden homes were a really hot topic back in 2008 when this was happening. And with the notion of the retirement aged folks that live here in general, as well as the idea of maintaining some of our sort of low key type atmosphere in our city, giving opportunity for retired folks to live here was a big deal. So I definitely want us to kind of bookmark that and make sure that there's some, just look at the space, look at the zones that we have, and
We'll get to that on the map.
Yeah.
And then just do.
Just real quick, so this, wouldn't it counter, though, the requirements that we have as a city in order to have a home on a specified amount, lot?
It depends on the zoning district. So a patio home, kind of by definition, wouldn't be allowed in an R1
The only
zone.
place it's currently allowed is in this gray spot, which is the apartments up there on Quail Run Road. Nowhere else is allowed.
So you
This change, he's proposing that we leave that and add this one down here where the Martindale apartments are. That's the only R3 and R4 space.
Lisa was kind of getting to it, where you'll see a lot of these are in assisted living communities where people can live independent in their own buildings, but they don't have a yard to take care of.
Mhm.
That's probably where you'll see most.
Almost sounds
most
like
of
a
this.
townhouse.
Yeah, it's kind of like a detached townhouse.
Yeah.
if you will.
But
But
those,
it might have like community little courtyards that they kind of sit around, but.
So it would require somebody to come in here and make a big deal, developer, somebody say, I want to put one of these developments in on 10 acres out here somewhere, and we'd like to change that zone to.
One person isn't like we're gonna build them. Yeah.
correct. Individuals don't build these types of dwellings. This is something for a development that could be, you could get a lot of these houses on even as small as 3 acres. And so it's usually by a developer.
All right, personal services, defining that as a commercial district sort of item. Place of worship, principal structure. Any questions on those?
So you'll specify in the specific use permit where personal services are allowed?
In the use table, yeah.
Give an example of a principal structure.
So
What?
so a principal structure in the R1 zone would be your house.
Okay.
The detached garage would be an accessory use to that principal structure.
Okay.
Why don't we stop there and go take the lunch break here?
Yeah. Do you think our food's ready?
Oh, 12:30, they might be ready.
Oh.
10 minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Carry on.
All right, recreational vehicle, that was an existing definition, and then recreational vehicle park. This will probably get the last 10 minutes, the definition of RV park.
Yeah, okay.
So basically, it's a similar sort of definition as a campground. The difference is being that the temporary occupancy is extended from just 9 days or 9 consecutive nights to 30, up to 30 consecutive nights. And there's no size restriction on the RV, but it does provide in the definition minimum amenities similar to the campground, but would include potable water, electric supply, and wastewater hookups for each campsite So basically full hookups at each location. And a requirement that they include a recreational facility and a retail facility and an on-site park manager.
So somebody could stay 30 days, go away for 1 day, and then come back and stay for 30 more days? And the way it's written there.
Way it's
The
written
way
there.
that, and the way that the recreational parks usually stay in compliance with that is that they will have, because you do have people who are, snowbirds that want to be here for 4 or 5 months. But what the parks will do is they will have that particular customer or RV owner, they'll have them move. They'll have them pull off the site and move to another site every 30 days, and that is customary.
Okay. Okay.
But that doesn't specify that. That says 30 days on the site.
If you pull out of that site and you go to another site, your 30-day clock starts over.
But really, like, we could just keep discussing the 30 days, but there's no way the city's gonna be able to enforce it. There's no oversight from the city, so it's just there, it's there in writing.
It's to do with, receiving the revenue from the hotel, motel tax. And so those people are gonna continue to pay it. The biggest thing is it prevents the occupant from starting to build porches and decks around their motorhome or their fifth wheel that makes it look more permanent versus not. It has to do with the look of the park. If you drive,
And what do you propose, Sam?
I'm sorry.
I was asking Sam, what does he propose?
No, I mean, Lisa did say though, that if they stayed for 30 days, that she suggests that they normally would just move to another lot on the same RV park.
Mhm.
But prevent them.
And that would
Building
prevent
a
them from
deck.
staying more than 30 consecutive days. But I would think that even though the unit is still on the RV site, even though it's moved to another one, you are in essence staying there more than 30 days because you've only moved. So I don't know if that means that they have to take the thing off the property and then come back, or if we're allowing them to say, I don't think anyone would read into that and say, okay, let's just go move to another place on the site and come.
No, that's in the business itself. That is what is customary. The reason that a city would have the 30-day statement in our code is so that the business would not then become, in essence, a mobile home, long-term mobile home park, if you will. It has to do with the tax. If we're going to have a recreational vehicle park, we are going to want the revenue from the hotel motel tax that becomes null and void if the resident or if the guest is there more than 30 days. So it makes the business, they can do it however they want to. They can allow the people to stay there and just start their contract over again. That's not for us to decide. We just want the revenue from it.
What she's saying is in the tax ordinance, it specifically states that we can only tax for stays less than 30 days. Whether that's a state rule or not, I don't know.
Well,
But it
is.
I'm
certainly
not
is in our
sure.
ordinance.
I'm not sure I'd want
Certainly is in our ordinance, and therefore that ties those two together.
People have recreational vehicles to stay in places that are cheaper than a hotel. So I don't know.
That gives the city teeth. It's there in writing to give the city teeth. Just like Lisa was saying, if somebody is building, whatever, a attached garage or whatever, that part, the other part about if they move and come back and go to another place, that's for the business to deal with. What it states right there, the 30 days gives the city leverage to talk to the business owners to say, look, this is what's going on,
Only if someone from the city is going through there and monitoring the paperwork based on the hotel tax received.
Yeah, if they're there for 4 months, then I don't think that we should be collecting hotel tax.
I mean, code
Basically,
enforcement.
any developer who is going to put in a recreational vehicle park, they are going to look at the requirements that are listed in our code. If that says that no guests or RVs are allowed to stay more than 30 days, that tells the developer what kind of business we are allowing. No, we're not going to go be the police and be like, have you marked tires and have you been here too long, da da da. No, that is for the purpose of the developer who is building or developing an RV park in the first place as to what kind of business they are going to develop. Wolf Creek, that is on the San Marcos side of our city, which is outside of the city limits, it's evident that that's a long-term RV park situation. To my knowledge, based on the opinion of this council and previous councils, that's not the kind of our recreational vehicle park we would want inside the city limits. We would want one that they're not long-term, so we could get the revenue.
But still, if somebody is staying in that same park and just because they moved to another one and they stay there for 4 months, I don't feel like we should be taking short-term rental taxes from them.
They technically wouldn't be staying there for 4 months because there'd be
Yeah.
different spaces.
And she's saying that they will be, that they'll just drive in and sit there for 4 months. And now, just because we wrote it in here, it's a play, it's just a lawyer trick to go off and make them eligible for the short-term tax. And I don't know what to tell you on that one. The B&B thing is
Other people's money.
You're opening yourself
it's for the
up
benefit of
to
something that needs to be addressed. And
Yeah, well, nobody will ever want to stay there because it's going to be a lot more expensive.
So we collect the hotel tax off RV parks based on the length of time of stay?
That's the
because it's
suggestion.
considered a
collect
short
hotel
term.
tax based off the length of time to stay, period. It doesn't matter whether it's RVs or fixed units.
Or 1 month, or 2 months, or?
Well, yeah, we don't tax people for anything longer than 30 days. If they stay there longer than 30 days, you don't tax them, which is driven a lot of confusion with a lot of our residents, where people have a B&B and they advertise and they say, well, they advertise and therefore they should be paying taxes. But there's no evidence that says that they haven't been staying there for 90 days, 6 months, whatever. And I mean, the tax law rules in that case, our tax ordinance rules in that case, it says anything longer than 30 days, that doesn't apply. And so this definition would force whoever develops an RV park into saying, yes, I agree, they're only going to be there 30 days, therefore they will always apply.
And pay the short-term hotel motel tax.
Then they'll have to pay the short-term hotel tax. Now, Jan's point is that,
If they do stay there for the summer or their winter Texans or whatever, then
why should
I don't
they
think
have
it's
to do
fair.
that? Yeah, why should they have to?
Not fair to the park or to the customers. It's just like the city just grabbing taxes.
Dan,
Because they're
here's
already-
there are financial breaks when you stay a longer amount of time. So when we have a 7% hotel motel tax, if in fact somebody is going to be there for 2 nights and it's $65 a night when they stay there for 2 nights, we would get the 7% off of the $65. However, the RV park management or owners or whomever give a reduced fee when they stay longer. Say if that exact same spot, that's $65 if you're there for 2 nights, becomes $35 if you're there for 29 days. We still get the 7%, but it's on a much less dollar amount. We cannot be worried or concerned about how a business charges. The other part is that you have a completely different caliber of clientele, customers, guests, when you have long-term recreational vehicle sites versus short-term. It is I'll just be straight about it. You have much nicer environments. You have a higher level of socioeconomic status patrons when you have short-term.
So you don't want to have any, what is it called? A manufactured home park in this city at all.
The manufactured home park is defined. We do provide, it is considered a use table. What this would do is say, you can't just have a patch of dirt and be able to put RVs on it. We're saying if you're going to put RVs in the city, it's going to be someplace that's a little bit of a destination that has amenities.
Correct.
Has a restaurant facility, it's going to have a retail facility, on-site caretakers, full hookups. It'd be a destination. So something more akin to the previous developer who came in with, like Summer Breeze versus somebody who wants to come in and just throw down a couple patches of gravel and put RVs on.
But if they stay longer than 30 days, they don't have to do any of these things.
It wouldn't be allowed.
But we have that, as they mentioned, at Wolf Creek, where you've got RVs sitting,
Yeah, but those are permanent. Yeah, people
permanent RVs,
that are,
but it's not in the city limits.
They're not in the
yeah,
city.
or they may even own those little tracts of land, I don't know. But I think somebody owns that tract of land and just rents out those trailers. Those manufactured homes.
All right. We did break.
Okay.
So we're
Yeah, I
back for
think
lunch.
we need to talk about this now.
Come back at 1 o'clock. I'll go pick up, make sure we get our sandwiches, and I'll be right back.
Huh? Oh, yeah, you're gonna need help. Actually, I think I'm over there.
So Rob, it seems like at the Parks Advisory meeting that they sprinkled the wildflower seeds all.
No, is it a possibility? Definitely. Is it a probability? Not sure. You know, but, and how many people have had that? I can't, no one. Well, it was, and then we know it if we were close to her community, even from those that have, and it would be nice to know. Yeah. Now, here's the thing, but there are people who are harmed by saying, you know, I've been exposed and now I'm going to get tested, and then they got quarantine, and they can't make enough money for the family, you know, so and they are, that's right. So a lot of them may not raise their hand and go, you know what, I think I could have been exposed, just because of the penalty. So, you know, when I thought I had it at one point, they were saying you can't come to the clinic. I'm going, oh my God. Like it took forever to get tested, because this was early on, and I couldn't do it. Of course, I was getting paid, but my patients were paying my part, and they were getting, you know, referring doctors upset. Oh, yeah. It is not. So I can see why someone would say, I'm just going to fight it. I think it's probably wrong, but I can tell you nobody will know. They just stopped testing. We don't go in for testing now. Nobody, right? And if you have the antibodies, you know, that's.
All right.
Might go back.
We got Lisa and Mike. There we go. Ask to unmute. More.
Okay, we're ready.
All right. Lisa, you there? We got Mike, his audio is back.
I'm here.
All right. I think we're just waiting on
Oh, Jan is still out there.
Lisa to get back on.
Those jalapeno chips. I'm still. Gotta drink more water.
Button.
What's that word, Jared? Next to.
Non-protrusible.
Now that's that's better than nanatorium.
Has something to do with biodegradable-ish, I think, is what that term is. I looked it up once upon a time. And more vocabulary.
Okay, now we start.
Yeah, let's. Lisa, you with us?
Yes, sir.
All right. There, we're all set. I don't know if we're gonna gavel in officially or not, but we'll keep going. So where we left off was RV park. I think we talked that one to done. Is there any remaining issues, discussion on the definition of what an RV park is? What should be included in that definition?
So you don't care, one single caretaker could be if there's 50 RV sites or 100, or, I mean, what if they have a huge RV park? Are you just saying one based on the whole size of the RV park? It doesn't matter?
Yes,
I think so.
Okay.
I still have problems with the 30-day consecutive nights.
You want to, what's the recommended change?
31.
Okay. Sam, what do you think of that?
Oh, if they stay more than 31 days, it's not considered short. I mean, it is considered short-term, but
Wouldn't be considered short term. We wouldn't get the, we wouldn't collect the hotel motel tax.
well, how we
Wait a
gonna?
minute, what
How we gonna
she's
make
saying is.
But they're moving so that there's no permanent structure.
But you're saying then they wouldn't have to pay the tax then because it's
Right.
over 30 days.
Oh.
We need to get some money.
No, wait, if they stay less than 30 days,
They'll
they're
still have
eligible for to be taxed. Okay?
Right.
If they, by putting this in here, it says anybody that stays there is gonna be taxed. It takes the next level of analysis away, just makes that go away. If you take that out and say, you know, you can stay for 4 months if you want to, then somebody, and then in the case of our current tax ordinance, it puts, the burden is on the proprietor
Oh, okay.
to differentiate between when they should and shouldn't be collecting taxes and to make sure that they turn that in like they're supposed to. So this actually makes it life easier on the proprietor. They have no, they don't have to do any thinking over this. They just say, if you're here and you stay here, you get taxed. Now, whether they've actually physically make them move after on the 31st day, that's up to them. But because of that statement, it says you're still gonna get the 7% tax.
Right.
Okay?
Well,
Now-
you're saying for the weekend or something.
I think whether or not we should be collecting 7% tax, that's a different subject. I think.
Right.
But,
I agree.
but I
Okay.
think that as long as we've got that on the books.
All right, so yes,
the
all right,
30 days
keep it.
ought to be a reasonable.
I'm okay with it.
Makes life easier on all parties. So,
I'm gonna need to look into that hotel tax, because our ordinance, it's our code specifically, a tax is imposed on each person under lease, concession permit, right of access, license, or contract grant, pays for the use or possession or the right to use or possession of a room that is in a hotel. So
it doesn't really say RVs, does it?
it doesn't apply in our, at least in our ordinance for hotel tax. I don't think it would apply to RVs as it's
Okay.
described here.
that is
So-
where it needs to be changed to short-term rental.
All short-term rentals?
Well, all short-term rentals are subject to the tax. No matter what.
That's probably another area where we have.
Yeah,
conflicting
that-
words used within our
that's-
ordinance and things. So
That's a lot of work.
But that has nothing to do with this definition. So-
it potentially could. So the 30 days is mentioned in the hotel occupancy tax. I'll pull it up so that we can see what I'm looking
Yeah, I was looking
at.
for 34.
I wonder, is it lawful to restrict business owners that way?
It's not a restriction on business owners. It's a requirement that they collect and remit, but the tax is is not paid by the business owner, it's paid by the person who's making use of that service,
For the customer.
the customer, right, in this case.
So the definition of hotel there is, you'd have to go up and look what that is.
Right. So it references Texas code, yada, yada, yada. So there's some looking into that'd be needed for this. The area on item 3 is where there's a mention of 30 consecutive days.
Hotel, a building or group of buildings designed and occupied as a temporary abiding place of individuals. To be classified as a hotel or motel, an establishment shall provide 5 or more individual guest rooms or units and shall furnish customary hotel services such as linen, maid, telephone,
So we would just need to change
use and
the
upkeep of
hotel.
furniture.
Possibly, and then I likely will need to look at what's in the, what's it, tax code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's gonna have. I mean, here's the tax code. I'd have to go in here and hunt and
Yeah.
find, you know, is a meeting defined by section such and such,
Right.
go click and such and such.
52.01.
Probably somewhere stuck in there, members of public. Okay, so this term in the definitions includes a hotel, motel, tourist home, tourist house, tourist court, lodging house, inn, rooming house, or bed and breakfast. So that's where our short-term rental gets incorporated. It's probably under that definition in the state code as bed and breakfast. Now, what it doesn't appear that it would apply to RVs unless they're using under the, where this previously was discussed with a developer, Summer Breeze, where they had a park model type of thing that they rent. That's probably where that occupancy tax would be collected. And then I'd want to look into how sales tax might be applied to RV parks and such, but.
Well, it would depend what the definition of tourist court is.
Yeah, this is going to require some little research. So, on the issue of 30 consecutive nights or not, if the purpose of changing that language is a reflection of the hotel tax consideration, I say we table that and look into that hotel tax consideration. Let's see what the tax implications actually are, or would be. It could be none. And then we can have that discussion on the 30 days.
Well, what monies would the city collect from an RV park if you did not have the hotel tax? What is an example of some monies that the city would retrieve or collect from an RV park?
0.
Have property taxes.
Commercial,
Sales taxes, don't they charge sales
Yes.
tax?
Sales tax to buy Coke or whatever's in their retail area.
what about sales tax for the motel, to lease the RV site?
That's not the way it works. If we're gonna, it's not done by lease.
I don't know if on an RV site, if they charge like $450 a month and that's it, a flat $450, or do they charge sales tax on top of that?
It is
Okay.
determined by our ordinance.
All right, we'll table it and come back to it.
Yeah, maybe you could call like York Creek. York Creek is the RV place that's close by, and you could call them and say, what do you charge? How much is it? Do you charge sales tax?
Yeah.
If the people are staying more than, if it is a long-term, if some parks have long-term stay, some parks do not. It depends on how the business is set up. If they stay less than 30 days and they are inside of a city limit, that it is determined by the city, and or if they're in the ETJ. I just want to be clear that make sure that by definition, our short-term rentals are applicable whether you are inside the city limits or inside of our ETJ.
Let's get back to the definitions in the zoning table.
Thank you.
We've already said we need to go, give Jared time to look at this a little deeper.
Separate from the number of days, the potential tax implications, any other recommended changes on that definition? Okay. Continuing on, recyclable materials facility. No changes there. Retail kiosk and we'll get into restaurants. So I'm gonna continue on past the recycling stuff. And we'll pull up retail and restaurant.
How about 350 feet or less? Because some little coffee houses on wheels or whatever are not gonna be 350 square feet. I mean, is that what you're calling like a little coffee place on wheels?
If basically, if it's occupied by a person, that person, the kiosk will have a minimum floor area of 250 square feet. So basically, we require that kiosk, if there's somebody inside of it, is between 250 and 350 square feet in size.
Oh, okay, minimum,
Where do you, oh, there it is.
minimum.
But he said if it's on wheels, so it would be a mobile food vendor.
No,
Potentially, I mean,
that's not, we got mobile
Mhm.
food carts here somewhere else, don't we?
we
But when Sam had said it, he said on wheels, so that's something different than this.
Or do we have that? Got
A
it.
freestanding one-story
Structure.
retail kiosk.
Yeah,
Or-
that's, I think you're right, it'd be a mobile
Mhm.
food vendor permit for a coffee shop on wheels.
Would apply to that retail kiosk? Okay.
Because we don't have mobile food vendor in here, do we?
It's a business regulation, I believe, and I think it's.
Is it defined under mobile food vendor?
I don't think,
We did buy the rims at one time.
We haven't asked for mobile food vendors, like, are you talking about like a truck?
Or a trailer, you could even pull a little coffee thing with a trailer. Yeah, it's mobile, you could either drive it
it says freestanding, it doesn't say
Fine, but
permanent,
I don't have one.
non-permanent structure.
Yeah, so I think
Hello?
mobile food is something we need to add in to our zoning ordinance. We have it in our business regulations, but it's not in our zoning. So yeah,
in a definition of what mobile food vendor is.
we have it in our other ordinance.
Okay. Mike, were you gonna say something? Hello? Is Mike still on?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think so his phone is not on.
Oh, maybe we turned him off when we were during break.
We asked him, he spoke to us.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, good.
All right. Any other questions on what you see there?
Well, Sam's recommendation, 350 square feet or less is.
Or up to 350 square feet,
Maximum,
but there's a minimum of 250.
Oh, maximum floor area. 50.
minimum,
You got it, you got it.
yeah. But some little coffee trucks are gonna be less. Oh, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about retail kiosk. Okay.
So what I'll do. Yeah, on mobile food vendor, I'm gonna just pull from that ordinance, so in chapter 114.
Now, I know as far as restaurant drive-through goes, that some cities have an ordinance about how many cars can be waiting in line in the drive-through lane. I know this is too specific, but I know if you've never been to Chick-fil-A and seen how many cars are in line at Chick-fil-A, there must be 40 or 50 cars, but, it does mean that more vehicles are running and there's pollution and all this. I mean, I've seen it at In-N-Out Burgers in drive-throughs in, say, California, that they didn't even allow them to have a drive-through lane, but I'm just talking about that, but there seems, I don't know. I don't want to see a Chick-fil-A with about 50 cars in line all running at the same time.
Right now, in our use table, this is going to be an issue where we want to discuss. Right now, drive-throughs are not permitted by right use. You have to get a special use permit. So unless you're within the Walton Development Agreement.
And we
That's another
definitely need
issue.
to deal with that.
Well, that was in their development agreement that they could have drive-throughs.
I'm talking about drive-throughs as in, and entering the pandemic, the Shades was able to pivot their business so that they didn't lose business by creating a drive-through, but I feel like we need to make concessions for that.
Yep, we can get to that on the use table. Any questions on the definitions?
It sounds like the restaurants can't have a restaurant and drive-through. You didn't have either one. You can't have a combination. What if Romana's wanted a drive-in?
Have to come get a specific use permit.
Oh, really?
Maybe.
I mean, a lot of restaurants already have drive-throughs.
Not
What about, well, Shades,
Shades doesn't have a drive-through,
yeah, they
Yes,
do.
they do.
so I don't think so.
Yeah, they
Shades
do.
Yes, they do.
Did they add it? They should have.
Yeah, there's a drive-through they have a lane for a drive-through.
Around.
They created it as
That's where I
a,
get my coffee.
And you drive through?
they created it as a way to pivot their business so that they would not lose business as a result of the pandemic.
Well, we gotta go shut that down.
No, we do not.
Yes, you do. You don't wanna not follow an ordinance, do you?
Well, that's where we are right now, needing to pivot.
Yeah, but right now, they're not following the ordinance.
That's right.
Well, okay,
So the question
Yeah.
is what happens if there's a drive-through window?
in a
In the-
permanent
in the-
restaurant.
In the definition of a dine-in only, it excludes those restaurants that have a drive-through window.
I think our restaurants, any
So-
restaurant needs to have the ability to have both.
I do too.
As long as
Okay,
they
that's
comply.
what, that will be a use table discussion.
We're in a new age.
As long as they comply.
I mean,
We have-
every
we-
restaurant
we
kind of
as
has
a
some kind
city
of drive
need to
through.
follow ordinance.
So I think if it's not clear on what the definition of a drive-through is, we can modify that, but it almost sets up that anything that doesn't qualify as a dine-in only and has a drive-through window by definition or by exception would be a drive-through. Now, I can clarify that if we think it's not clear.
And that's like you're stating, like, whenever they come and they are, that's just saying, okay, this is a dine-in only. This is a restaurant with a drive-through. Whenever they're filling out their paperwork, they could check the boxes. It is a dine-in and it is a drive-through. That's just giving you the definition, but like you're saying, all the other details,
It's gonna be in the use table.
yes.
Okay. So you can have a combination of both.
As
Yeah,
long as
because
it's
it
not-
says the drive-through is on or near the restaurant premises, so you're allowing both to happen if you're allowing a drive-through to be on or near the restaurant. You're allowing them both to be in that case.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll fix it at the use table.
Well, then Shades would be permitted to do that if they have a drive-through on or
Well,
near.
it depends
Under
on-
the use table.
Aren't they commercial?
It is.
Nothing to do with it.
The use table, the only thing is you have to be in a commercial zone and you have to have a specific use permit. It only got one thing.
Ah.
Yes. And, gotta do that.
All right, school, public, private, self-storage units. And then we get the definition of short-term rentals at the bottom, but anything on,
Okay, institution.
Well, what do you mean by small individual units? I mean, what if it's a bigger space, or if you're having a store, you're saying they can't store an RV or a boat there? It's just small individual storage units?
I can delete the word small.
Yeah, because small does that mean medium, or does that mean big? I mean,
If we want to define a size requirement, but I have no interest in doing it.
I would just go away with small and say individual storage units.
Huh.
That's all I got on that.
Does that allow for boats and, RVs?
That would allow that.
What's that?
I think that change would allow the storage of boats, RVs.
Individual storage units.
It doesn't say that though.
Or spaces? Or
And we have to
or
decide,
space- what does unit mean? Does that mean it's gotta be inside?
Maybe completely enclosed is how I'd probably consider that.
But I don't think we want that. I don't think Jack would like that much.
What's that?
Mr. Bud down there, I think he's have people bring in RVs and things and park about there.
All right, so
established is gonna be grandfathered in, but I think this is something we should talk about. You know,
So this is, so we need to talk about enclosed versus,
RVs and boats.
or it could just be
open
covered.
air. Covered.
It
Yeah.
could just be covered. It has to do with the aesthetics and how nice it looks. It's gonna have to do with, you know, a covered area or an enclosed opportunity is obviously gonna cost more. So the business owner is going to obviously charge more. If we don't have any kind of requirement on it, then it could become a parking lot or a sea of, you know, travel trailers
Yeah,
and
Lord.
boats and whatever. We have to decide if that's what we want or not.
all right, so here given the
So
discussion,
Jack Mud has a business of
updated that to individual.
RVs and boats.
What's that?
We have somebody here in town that
Yeah.
charges to store your
Jack's
RV
got
or
his-
boats
Got his barns
or
down there.
extracurricular vehicles.
But if they come down there and say, I think he gripes about somebody broke in and tore up, well, I didn't break in, well, went through the fence and ended up damaging or doing some damage to things you just had parked outside down there. I think he lets them just park.
Oh. So he doesn't charge.
Yeah. I think
And
he
it's-
charges.
Oh,
But it's
okay.
not covered
So
either.
It's
where
not
you-
covered either.
It isn't even covered, and that says.
The updated definition, the individual enclosed storage unit or covered spaces for rent.
But as he's saying, MUD does have, or other people can have RVs or boats on next to the storage spaces that are not covered.
The question for the council is, do we want to require coverage?
Yeah,
Well, just because something's covered doesn't mean it looks great from the sides.
It could be a tarp. I mean,
Yes,
who's to say
right.
like what it is? I mean, I
Yeah.
just think like, you know, if you're saying covered, does that mean like you want it to look like an airport parking lot on the side of Highway 80? So
say,
covered could be like
say
different things.
covered or uncovered spaces.
You'd have to say permanent covers or something, I don't know.
Door,
But we haven't even said if we're allowing RVs or boats in a storage unit anyway. We haven't even gotten there yet to that.
Most storage
Well,
units do allow the storage of boats and our RVs and vehicles.
But you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
I think depending on where you want to put it in the use table, if all of these are going within the commercial district, then if that's the only permitted uses within the commercial district, I think you could have it how open air storage. If it's in the residential, that's for the council to consider, but I would consider not having open air storage in a residential area.
Agreed.
So
That would be in the use table.
well, we probably would want to have two definitions between an open air storage, self-storage versus a storage unit.
But you know, which brings to, okay, so then like self-storage units. So whenever I'm thinking about it, you know, like now the freight containers that they're using, those are self-storage units, but some people may use them as dwellings. That's like the self-storage units that are being sold, but some of them are turning it into a cabin in the back of their house. So there's like different, definitions as far as how it's being used.
I think-
Right there, what it says, businesses or any other activity within individual storage units other than storage shall be prohibited. So if it's stated as a storage unit, does that mean it cannot be used as a dwelling? Or how would the definition as a storage unit fit, for a livable dwelling?
I don't know if it's envisioned. We could have, if there's a singular Connex intermodal container on somebody's property, that would have to fall under the accessory use of that location. If there's more, if there's a bunch of them, it'd have to be a permitted accessory use. I think when this is considered, it's a commercial enterprise, so.
I think the definition is by location, by zone.
We could clarify and say self-storage units are covered spaces for rent or lease. I mean, that already implies a commercial use, but we can describe commercial use explicitly in the definition. That way, what you don't want to have is somebody to have a bunch of connexes in their backyard and calling it a home business and then putting it out for lease.
Correct. I think it does need to be defined like that.
So, yeah.
So.
Typing stuff up.
So
Yeah,
commercial
yeah.
use where individual enclosed storage units are offered for rent or lease and is restricted solely to the storage of items. Conduct of sale, business, or other activity within the individual storage units, storage shall be prohibited. I think that clarifies it.
So
And
they
then-
can't have an office there? or-
You can't have an office in a storage unit.
So we're saying at storage units, we're not allowing RVs or boats?
Not in not in the current definition as it's written, but if you want to include it, we can modify the definition.
I would add that to it.
What?
Yeah, because
So
Say that again?
would you want to separate something from storage units being allowed in one area and storage units or open air storage being allowed in a separate area?
yes, but it's on the same site, like River Road Storage out there in San Marcos by the Humane Society. They have all their storage places in front, and then behind that, they let people store their RV there for $70 a month or whatever. I mean, and you've seen it maybe before, Sonia, where they do allow other things other than storage units, RVs and boats. And if we've got RVs that we're allowing here, maybe some people would like to leave them here and store them there, and then when they're not storing them, then take them to the RV park or whatever. I don't know, but I think we should allow
Something,
boats and RVs in a storage unit site, other than just individual enclosed storage.
all individual storage units are, and are open air, open air and are covered.
You could have both. I mean, you could even charge more if it's covered than if it isn't, you could have a couple of.
You could include that with them if it's covered or not, doesn't matter.
Yeah, just,
Spaces.
our open air spaces are offered for rent. Yeah, Yeah, open air would imply something that's not in an enclosed space.
And then how do you have an entity such as this comply when their property is in the scenic corridor? And anytime there's anything new in the scenic corridor, they have to apply for a certificate of appropriateness. What would be the instrument, if you will, that we would use to have that potential business comply?
The scenic corridor ordinance, from my perspective, is a big waste of time.
Yeah.
It is a major headache for city staff. It doesn't accomplish a whole lot. It's not clear what the purpose of it is. I mean, I understand the intent, but there's no clear criteria that's established in order for the city staff to make a recommendation to council on what should or should not be approved.
But
Other
hasn't-
than whether we like it or not.
Never disapproved.
But that so far has prohibited signs from being in multiple places along Highway 80 because of that scenic corridor ordinance. It's made it look better and we don't have as many signs up.
I'm
So no
jumping
billboard.
ahead. That's a overlay. That was
Yes,
a
but
3
that-
o'clock discussion. We'll
That's
get-
I think, yeah, let's review the scenic corridor or ordinance some other time.
Okay,
Yes, okay, let's move on. Short-term rentals, that's gonna take a while, right?
Hopefully not. Pretty
Okay.
short definition.
Okay with it.
This says dwelling as opposed to an RV pad.
Dwelling unit.
I think the definition's correct, by the way, but we keep morphing short-term rentals over there, they're an RV or they're in a tent, let's collect some taxes from them.
So,
Yeah, I think that's.
is a yurt in your backyard that you rent out on Airbnb or Pip Camp, is that considered a short-term rental?
Considered a dwelling.
yes.
Talking about this thing out here.
I mean, it could be like, we've stayed in yurts in the back for Airbnb.
You know, that's
I
good.
don't know if that is I don't know what they do with the yurt here. I just know from experience from us.
Dwelling. Or other.
I guess it depends if it's a permanent structure or not. A yurt is maybe not, or that tent is not
Yeah.
considered a
That
permanent
takes
structure.
care of it, guest house or other accessory buildings, okay.
I don't think it does take care of what we got going on.
Peter, and here is why. If in fact you are a property owner and you are sectioning off, however you so choose to do so, a portion of your property, you have it listed on one of these online sites or even in the newspaper or however, and you rent it for less than 30 days, you are subject to short-term rental hotel motel property tax or hotel motel tax. And this is yet another example of where we just need to pick it up a notch and include the language that is readily available and in today's terminology to put it in our ordinance. Otherwise, people are always going to figure out a way to get under the radar.
Okay, so let's go back to the question that was before us. How does a tent on next to the river count? Okay, this says that's not a short-term rental, even with what you added out.
Are you charging for it? Are you renting it to people
It has
outside?
nothing about charging, that's just defined short-term rental. Does
Uh-huh.
a tent count? And if it does, we need to put it in this short-term rental definition. And if it doesn't, then we need to recognize that a tent doesn't count.
I don't think it should count. I really don't think, RV parks should count either.
Well, it depends how you define accessory building. That's just it.
Well,
We already did that, didn't we?
Yes.
Good.
That's not fair.
A structure, the use of which is incidental, appropriate, and subordinate to that of the principal structure on the same lot. Is a tent a structure?
If it's got some sticks holding up a tarp, would you call that a structure? Does it protect you from the elements? Do you call that a structure?
I call it, if you say it protects you from the elements of structure, I
It
wouldn't
does.
call a tent a structure. But maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, if you're either gonna get sunburned or not,
Oh. No, I wouldn't call a tent a structure. I mean, it is, but, you know,
Okay, it's like, have y'all ever looked at hip camp? Does anybody ever look at hip camp? Hip, HIPCAMP. So on there, that's just like all kinds of people that whoever wants to, like your backyard, you could set up a yurt, you could set up a tent, you could let people primitive camp on the back of it. It's listed on there, people are renting it.
Airbnb for people with big yards. That you
Yes.
got- And people just come back, camp in your yard.
Yes,
Well, especially if you have a river.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Or rain or whatever. That was.
but that's up to the personal, the, you know, the personal homeowner. Oh my goodness. We're gonna tax everybody to death. No, you put a tent in your backyard and have people stay in it, then
you charge
Those
your
people-
we
followers.
gotta charge them?
are you charging them for it?
Charge them to make money.
I think on this case, in
It's
terms of
if
the
you
tax,
charge
it goes back to the state tax
You
law.
can barely
I don't think we
manage
can,
the hotel,
I don't think the city can define what is taxable or not. The state has defined what is taxable or not.
That's right.
So we don't know whether that includes tents or not, though, right?
Thank you.
So we're gonna go, you're gonna go,
We're gonna research.
you'll research that?
Okay.
All right.
Or look at Hip Camp if they charge a hotel, well, they don't charge a hotel tax for a tent.
Now, if we were a home rule city, we might have some options.
Looks like they don't charge,
But as a general law city, I don't know if we have a lot of options.
What?
doesn't look like they charge for it.
You do get charged at hip camp.
Oh, okay. What is it?
I've stayed with hip,
Oh, you have?
yes, I rent them.
Site visibility triangle, that's just a design consideration, single family residence. It's kind of the same sort of thing that we talked about of dwellings. This is just talking about attached and detached and what that means.
No, that's changed, right?
Mhm. Wait a minute. We're at single family resident attached. Okay.
So we're gonna leave the broad definition of structure and other similar forms?
He's
Where
gonna
we
go, you mean on short-term rental?
No, on single family, no, yeah, structure.
So this would be regarding accessory use where it uses the term structure.
And other similar forms. Other similar forms of manufactured homes?
Buildings, factories, sheds, cabins, manufactured homes. Anything constructed or erected on the ground. So. Other similar forms gives a lot of. A yurt might apply. A backpacking tent may not apply, even though they're both made out of fabric.
You read it, didn't you? Now, this one says that tent, that'd be a structure.
Yeah. So. Yeah,
Are you ready?
I could buy that. Any other form that's constructed or erected on the ground, tent
So if they're under short-term rentals, if you
Cabins,
just call it a structure
other
instead
similar
of
homes.
Dwelling.
a dwelling, maybe that answers the question.
One or more structures? Or dwelling? Are we calling dwelling structures instead then?
What is that background?
I don't know.
Well, it's the band down for.
No, somebody's mic is on and they're doing something.
They're packing or doing something. Putting their groceries away.
Yeah, that mic.
For that rental of a structure or a portion of a structure that is rented out.
Boom, yeah.
Okay.
And then the structure down there says it's anything you put up. All right.
Anything you put on the ground.
I just found in Hip Camp, I just found a trampoline camping area. Like,
Exactly.
they literally have a trampoline in their backyard. They literally have a trampoline in their backyard and they're charging $25 a night for 4 people to sleep on it.
That's hilarious.
That's creative.
So you're gonna come down here and manage all that?
Who are you talking to?
Yeah,
No.
well,
Go check the trampolines in everybody's backyard?
townhouse, thoroughfare plan, townhouse. This,
Okay.
Coming wall on.
Townhouse. Here we go.
Wouldn't it be each on a lot? I mean, you can't have a common wall and then have separate lots.
so when I went to a townhouse in Virginia, I owned my front yard, my backyard, but my side yard ended at the extent of my house, and that wall was shared with my neighbor to my left and my right.
You don't know who owned the 2x4 in between, but you own your shoe right down there.
If there was a hole in the wall, whose responsibility to fix that hole is, I don't know, is up for debate.
Structure. But you can have a townhome with sharing the same wall on the same lot as well.
That would be a duplex. Basically, a townhouse is a duplex or multiplex. But they go on the same lot, they're different lots.
But they're attached.
They could look functionally the same, but the ownership of the land is different. Rental, tubing related business.
Do you have a equipment rental anywhere, like not just indoor tools, but
Yeah, we
renting?
covered that earlier. How's the outdoor rental? Forget what the.
Outdoor rental?
I forget what it was, but we covered that earlier. Yeah, we have equipment rental, parentheses, outdoor storage is where the,
Okay.
Say that again?
so he asked, here's a tool rental for indoor. Do we have something for outdoor? We do. It's
Oh, yes.
under equipment rental, outdoor storage.
I did see that.
All right.
Right.
Tube rental, let's see.
Or upgrades.
You don't need to say anything about tube rental businesses not being in the floodway or,
That'd be a use table or yeah, it'd be like basically a use table issue.
oh, when we get to the use table, we'll see that.
Yes, and regarding the floodway, we get to the districting and how we want to do this.
Okay, okay.
All right, uses, that's accessory use, principal use, those are terms we've kind of used throughout the day. There you go. Utility facilities, Victorian architecture, Washington, those are terms used in the use table. Any comments?
No,
Victorian structure.
So a tower is not a utility facility then?
The tower is separately defined.
Okay.
And we covered that in
Yes.
So why is a Victorian structure defined?
reference somewhere.
Oh, it is, okay.
I'll just ask the same question.
It-
Where did,
Trying to think where it's referenced. Maybe in historical district.
On Main Street.
Or
Victoria.
definition, or- I don't know.
Yards. Okay, that
Oh,
brings us to
okay.
the end
Area required.
of,
Thank
Side
God.
yard.
thank goodness.
Oh, Victoria structures.
Actually, that was very
Oh,
good.
I think we all have, now we have some terms we're working with. There's still some outlying things we'll come back with regarding bee farms, classification of shipping containers and tiny homes, separately or together, probably separately. Including mobile food vendor in the definitions, and doing research on the sales tax, hotel tax implications.
did you say
regarding-
loft? Did you say loft apartment versus garage apartment?
No, I think that's clear, to me, that's clear.
I
Okay.
It's either, it's an accessory use building. And then whether it has a kitchen or not.
Just have
will
it with-
determine-
That was what I was asking.
Yeah, if there's an apartment above the garage, that could be considered separate dwelling if it meets the standards that we set for dwelling.
Okay.
All right.
Side yard, okay.
Here we go. We're going to, I think what I want to do now, I want to quickly breeze through what the districts are, so we're on the same page. We've talked about them a lot. I think we all kind of, most of us have familiarity with many of them, but wanted to briefly go through that. So this is a lot of, regard other information regarding continuing non-conforming use, buildings, lots, who's in charge of this, planning commission, role of city council, board of adjustment, appeals, which is the city council, specific use permits, what that process is involved with. Those,
All that is specific use permit?
the process for reviewing and process for going through zoning changes, applications. This will be the process that we follow when it comes time to adopt our zoning ordinance. A lot of that, I believe, is required by state law. Might have a chance to take a look, make sure all that's up to date. Variances, how you deal with variances and requests for variance. Then special exceptions. Effect. Application standards, site development standards. Manufactured home standards, what they maybe made of. All right, here we go, district regulations. So the districts that we have conceptualized, starting on section 155.075, These are the different zoning districts that we
Okay, hold
have.
on. Well, hold on, let me get to where you are. Yes.
Hmm.
Okay, in there, thank you.
So, single family residential, 1 and 2 family residential, the R1 and R1A. Manufactured home district, R2. Multifamily residential, low density, R3. Multifamily residential, medium density, R4. We don't mention a high density. Mixed use, commercial, heavy commercial, and industrial. Those are the districts that we have. Not every district is going to show up on that map. I don't believe we have a C2 on that map, and I don't believe we have an industrial on that map.
That's correct.
Okay, which map are we referring to?
The zoning map. So if you're
The zoning. Blood.
This map over here.
Well, I wanted,
so I think
zoning district. Yes, okay, wait.
Jan, there might have been a mix-up. I'm not sure if it made the
Okay.
email with the distribution. If you go to our homepage,
Okay,
go to our city homepage, and you go to How Do I, and under How Do I, you have building and zoning regulations. If you click on that page, it'll take you here, and it has a copy of the map that you can click on and open.
okay, good. Okay.
Okay, hold on, let me get there so we're all on the same page. So how do I? You can click on what?
Yep, so you go to How Do I, and under How Do I, hover over, and you have building and zoning regulations. If you click on that, it'll take you to the zoning page. And you'll be able to click on this map, and it'll download, and should be able to open it. Or open a new page. And you
Okay,
have
hold
option of downloading there as a
I'm
PDF.
slow for the brain.
And that has the new FEMA flood map in it?
No,
Or are we gonna try and add that?
that's going to be part of this discussion we're going to get to.
Okay.
So in these districts, it sets up the purpose of the district. So the purpose of R1 is intended for the development of detached single-family residence and customary accessory uses on lots of 1/2 acre in size. So that's the majority of the city. That's likely what most of y'all are familiar with. Most of this area downtown is that along Northwest River Road is that zoning, and then in Hobbs and Brother Place is that zoning. This is where the zoning district prohibits additional dwellings. It's a single dwelling structure per lot. It has a different setbacks and landscape designs. R1A,
Can I ask
Yeah.
a question real quick about so on here it says of at least 1/2 acre inside and you cannot have another dwelling. So say if somebody around this neighborhood wanted to build a new dwelling in back of their house, how are they able to do that if it says right here that you cannot?
they could not. They'd have to subdivide their lot. They'd have to be big enough to do it. And if they couldn't do that, they'd have to look into getting a zoning change.
So they would have to subdivide the lot, so it has to be,
A 1/2 acre each after that subdivision.
So what did you ask again?
like if a house over here said, oh, I want to build a mother-in-law suite, or I want to build a detached dwelling as a guest house. This is saying that you cannot.
You could do a guest house as an accessory use, but you could not do it. Again, the difference between a guest house being a dwelling or not is the presence of a kitchen, really.
So the only
On
word
one
that
half acre.
differentiates it is just by saying a guest house. I want to build a guest house at my home that I already have right here. Do I still qualify under the, having to subdivide and half acre it? Is it just in the wording that's gonna define it?
So what's going to define it is whether what you want to do is a permitted accessory use is the term that would apply. And
What
so,
defines it is what the drawing is. Are you gonna put a kitchen in it?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
On your plans.
Then it's not a guest
Because
house,
we have to see the
right?
plan.
what's that? Yeah,
If you put a kitchen in, it's not a guest house, it's a dwelling.
Uh-huh.
most likely.
So when you get to there, you say, here's the plans, I've got a kitchen in it, you go down the dwelling side.
Or if it,
Dwelling says you can't put two dwellings on the same plat. You gotta go subdivide it. If it's less than an acre, you can't subdivide it because you can't meet the half acre rule. So then you gotta get to the point where you say, do I go in for an exception, a variance, or a zoning change? You know,
Exception.
Or build a guest house without a kitchen.
house without a kitchen.
A lot of TV dinners.
So a guest house is a dwelling without a kitchen,
that's what's one way to consider
a
it.
structure without a kitchen.
No, it's a dwelling. It has a bathroom, it has a sink.
Okay,
No, I don't think it is.
We-
Guest house.
Guest house.
that's right.
Colloquially, if you want to refer to it in shorthand as a dwelling without a kitchen, if that helps conceptualize what we're talking about for you, that's fine, but technically that's
Okay.
not how we defined it.
That's right. You gotta stick with the definitions. We just spent 4 hours.
We
going on.
have single family, that's the R1. 1 and 2 family residence, so R1A.
I mean, if it's confusing for us, think how it is for a citizen trying to do this. And if it does, and if it is just all in the wording on how you're gonna say you're gonna build it.
It's in the plans.
It's in the
Yeah,
plans,
in the
because,
plans. Uh-huh.
because, I mean, they're gonna come in, they're gonna bring everything to you, like he said, you're gonna say, okay, no, it goes this way, or yes, it goes the other way, I mean.
Uh-huh.
How do we consider this plan? Where does it fit under our land use regulation? So that's R1 is half acre size lots, single family dwellings, residences. R1A is 1 and 2 family residential district intended for development of single family residence, as well as low density 2 family duplex units at a maximum gross density of 6 dwelling units per acre. So this is slightly more dense than, this is more dense development than
That's it.
What
R1.
was it?
Just one little space in town way up here is R1A.
Right, it's not a widely used thing. So basically, it's single family and duplex is what it is. You can only have so many duplexes per density.
Hey Jared, can you split your screen to put the map in as well?
Can, but it might make the words hard to see.
Okay, well, I understand that. Okay.
I can pull up the map if there's a discussion on.
No. I'd rather read the words. You're good. Sorry.
R2 is a manufactured home district. And it's has in here the design standards. Yeah, again, development in this district shall not exceed maximum gross density of 6 dwelling units per acre. I don't know. It'd be interesting for me to see whether the Skyview area would have comply with that sort of description of units per acre.
I think you do.
Skyview is
It'll
definitely
Skyview's mixed use though, it's not.
We're gonna get to that.
it's also non-conforming.
See, what colors are two?
R2 is pink.
Oh, there we go.
This little area here, why, I don't know. I have no idea.
The reason that the R2 that is on the San Marcos side of town near Butler Lane was established was because that's what was already there. But now those places are gone. So that to me is something we would want to look at.
Good point. Good
That's-
point.
You mean as
We'll
far as
get that.
rezoning?
We'll get there on the map, when we get to the map. The next district, R3, is intended for multifamily apartment residences as well as 1 and 2 family residents. So it's kind of a multi-purpose residential, I don't really understand the R3, I'll put it this way.
All right,
The problem I have with it is it talks about multifamily apartment residence, but only a maximum gross density of 6 units per acre. Well, it's hard to have that's a very small apartment.
now, well, what's in the R3 right now? Is that those
Martindale.
apartments? Yeah,
And I don't think.
isn't that low
applies.
income housing?
I think because they have more than 6 dwelling units per acre.
They got 24 units, that's all they got. And I don't know how many acres they got out there. So 6 into per acre, they get 24 units, they only do 4 acres. That's bigger than 4 acres, but they got it. I don't know. I hadn't looked at it.
It's close. Might be close.
But this doesn't specify 1-story or 2-story?
It does specify the number of units, and so in that case, it would restrict the ability. You wouldn't necessarily want 6 units stacked directly vertically. So from a.
Well, if you
If you're a
wanted to have,
developer and you're looking at this, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to make them much higher than 2 stories.
I mean, if you wanted to have an acre of land and pick 6 units on it and then want to have more open space around the units, then you would try and build up high as possible.
Do we have anything in our code that you've come across that has to do with height regulations?
There's a table at the very end of our zoning ordinance, and it does not get very specific. That does have height standards. So actually, I think here that has, might have it on here, 28.5 feet or 2 1/2 stories. There you go. That's it. That's in the
What do you do with a half a story?
attic.
Oh, I see, okay. Storage up there or something, or put your AC equipment in there or whatever.
So that's what the R3 is. R4 is similar sort of thing, multifamily residential district, but a greater gross density of up to 12 units per acre instead of 6. So that's a higher density, higher living density. Mixed use district, this is the one where I want to stomp on a little bit. Mixed use district is intended to accommodate a variety of complementary land uses, including retail, office, service, and residential uses in close proximity that enables people to live and work and shop in a single location. It's further intended to create central gathering places to encourage economic and social vitality, promote the preservation and rehabilitation of downtown buildings, and provide development opportunities that are safe and attractive to pedestrians. So the only building we really have in Martindale that is a mixed-use building is the Buzzer Building that's getting redone. Everything else that we have mixed use, unless we're trying to turn that into a urbanized commercial center, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And we can get to that when we get to the map. But the point here being, mixed use is not multi-use. Mixed use is high density, mixed of commercial and residential. Tracking.
So do you have a problem with that on our main street?
I think we need to, when we get to the discussion about the map, is going it may have some implications there. But understanding that what a mixed use is, it's commercial, residential combined in like an urban pedestrian, area conducive to pedestrian foot traffic. Think of like the square downtown San Marcos, the Buzzer Building here. You know, in larger cities with higher buildings, you have stores and then apartments on top. Is that sort of?
Here currently, it runs from Gonzales all the way the other side of Lockhart Street.
Right,
Can
that's
we
why
just
we
talk
might
about
want
the actual definition?
that's why we might want to reconsider that portion when we get to the map. But I wanted to point out what this is.
Where is
It's
that
different.
definition that you said high density? I'm looking for it on,
It doesn't describe high density, but it, in most planning contexts, mixed use is a higher density development because it's including the use of retail and residential in close proximity.
and
So
ours just
that-
does not say that.
What's that?
And our definition just does not use the high density part, correct?
It does not use the adjective high.
So that's something that we're gonna need to change.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. I'm trying to break up the
Yeah.
image of what that's,
I'm trying
Trying
to
to
figure
turn
out
it
why
into-
you have a problem with this, or. No.
the problem is we've zoned Skyview mixed use. And Butterfly Meadows. And Hudson Ranch, mixed
They're all
use.
mixed use?
No,
What
no,
color are?
orange.
My map is.
This,
Like, is this right here mixed use?
yeah.
Yes.
This down here?
It would be even more exceptionally mixed use if there were apartments on top of
Uh-huh.
here. That's typically what it's used
Yeah.
for. But yeah, this downtown core Main Street, this is a mixed use area. We can make it purely commercial, but then you lose the ability for, Buzzer Building to have
Yeah,
apartments.
no, I like it mixed use.
I think it creates it's a vibrant downtown core is what they're typically used for.
Yeah,
Like community, like here, like town centers, a lot of town centers are mixed use type of development.
and again, I want to just kind of bring a little history into it. The areas that were determined mixed use was the closest thing to a conformed district because of what was already happening there.
Not up here, though. All residential. No, because up here, now Jack at his farm was never much more than that, but if you recall, that little area up here where Hermanos is and, Hackensack and, Percival and Clay had a dentist office up there for a while.
There's industrial where
They had even the council agreed to put in a used car lot down there several years back. So I could see along Highway 80 where they said, oh, this could all turn into commercial usage, et cetera. Why they needed to close Skyview, the front end of Hobson Ranch is, of course, has got the daycare in it, and that requires a mixed use. You can't put one of those in R1. And, so I kind of see where that's going, but we have to include all that. And why it jumped across the street, that used to be the vet clinic, I guess. Is that True Lane that's right in there? No?
Or is that Hermanas?
No.
Oh, that's True Lane.
Oh, I'm on the wrong side.
But right down there where True Lane now is apartments.
Because there was a business there.
Yeah.
Schleider's still up there.
No, it's where the vet, back in the 60s and 70s, there was a veterinary clinic, he was a professor up in Southwest Texas. Had a vet clinic down there, probably when this was going on. And then he sold that, I think, to True or somebody. And
Oh, he sold it to the Schleiders. They haven't been to Schleider, and that was he was still there when this was all done back in '08. And they had business back behind the big house. Not to mention all of those individual dwellings were rental properties.
So mixed use sort of fit with things that were there and
At the time,
without making it look like somebody's smile with missing a few missing teeth in there. I guess they did it that way. I don't know.
But anyways, I want to make sure we understand what it is. It sounds like I don't know. It sounds like we're trying to create space for either residential or commercial, and the intent of mixed use is to have residential and commercial. And having single family homes within a mixed use district doesn't create that kind of pedestrian sort of development. So I could see maybe along Highway 80, that sliver stretch from Hermanos on down, if, we might be able to creatively, fit something in there.
Like where they're clearing out the lot or
Yeah.
whatever, that would qualify under mixed use.
Yeah, if they want to put, that's right now it's zone mixed use, and so if the developer wanted to come in and do a similar sort of thing of, a bike store at the bottom and a loft on the top and a restaurant to the side, and, you kind of have this melting pot of different uses and kind of a urban-like area, the downtown-ish area. I think that could make sense. Not a lot of width there to make it happen, but it could work. It doesn't make sense on the other side of Highway 80, I guess, is where we have residential houses. And
Somebody wanted to put a gas station or.
There's a couple of businesses right at the front of Thomas Drive. There's those businesses that are in there.
So that business is one thing. I mean, we just don't have commercial.
Yep.
Anyways, I don't want to get too far down the map, but that's why I brought up the mixed use. In some areas, it makes sense. Some areas it doesn't.
Yes.
Because the intent is to create central gathering places and, safe and attractive to pedestrians.
This definition doesn't seem to fit where it's actually being used at or what it's intended for.
Right.
So this definition, the way it is, doesn't fit what's actually going on.
Right. And that, from my perspective, it might, but it's just creating a lot of areas of non-conforming use, and then if somebody comes in to continue that use, creates headache. Or if someone comes in and in Skyview and they have their lot, the home that they buy and say, we want to replace this, pull this one out, put a new manufactured home in, they wouldn't be allowed to, even though everywhere else on that street can, because they're continuing non-conforming use. But now them coming in, they wouldn't be able to do it. Even the current residents, I don't believe, would be able to replace their house if they wanted to, if their home if they wanted to.
Because it's mixed use?
because it's mixed use. It would not, they couldn't put a manufactured home in a mixed use area.
But it does combine residential use with commercial use. So residential saying that means that they could do that because mixed use is you're saying that you do have a residential use. Oh, not in the use table. Okay.
Right. So,
Well, maybe it'll help them more as 110 is built out. I mean, a lot of this land on 80 will be probably eventually more commercial than residential as it's built between 110 and Cherryville. I mean, that's where we would want to see the commercial development in the future on 80, I would think.
I think you're right, having that end of town being a commercial center for the city makes a lot of sense. The Rita heads that were provided from the master plan study that they did, possibly traffic patterns changed significantly since then, but I don't know. But that end of town gets a lot more traffic than downtown or Westridge part of town. So it would make sense that we take advantage of that portion of town to be a commercial center, a vibrant center, but we have new homes that are just built in mixed use areas that for the next 50 years, unless someone comes in and that land is so attractive for a developer to tear down and build something else in. I just don't think that it makes a lot of sense.
Well, we could change it.
We could change it. So I want to bring it up when we get to the map. It'll be something.